Hey everybody, it's Tim Francis, also known as Dr. Placard.
And I'm Iron Man 3.
And surprise, due to a change in Victoria's schedule, we actually will be able to record the album 73 stuff in the middle in a timely manner for stuff to come out. So we're going to do this instead. And
In a timely manner. New name for the album.
and the next episode after this one then will be Knox on Love, and results may vary. Yeah.
That's the Knox.
Uh-huh. So, what are we talking about then today, Victoria, that I just said?
We're talking about evening and the witching hour.
Question mark. Well, the devil's hour, perhaps, as we said this episode.
I like the name the witching hour a lot more.
I was surprised by how much time passed in this episode when they were like, it's 3 a.m. And I was like, oh, we already hit the witching hour. And they specified it and everything.
Connie, I'm assuming, called Jules off scene and was like, I'm not coming home.
Yeah, yes.
Jillian's not coming home.
I assume so.
Don't worry.
I assume so, yes.
There's food I cooked in the fridge, and Jules is like, I'll order pizza.
Yeah. And Connie's like, yep. So, episode 948, Evening, written by Kathy Buchanan. What happens?
So, in this episode, surprise of all surprises, Jason is still in the house. So, points.
To be fair, he wasn't
for
alone
him.
for long.
That's true, but my expectations were so low that he would leave, like, immediately.
He's gotten so old, he's finally gotten compliant and docile.
Or he trusts Jillian. Which one would you rather be?
He's old.
You monster. Devin doesn't believe in love. So lots of Pull House trying to figure stuff out. Him talking to, what's her face again?
Skye.
Him talking to Skye Feldstein. And
because it rhymes with Guy.
And them arguing a lot about the date stuff. And several times in this episode. She does tell him some stuff about, like, oh, that jacket belonged to this person, it came from this is connected to this. There's, like, did she tell him about the house?
What house?
The house that, like, Jillian and Jason are at. Did she ever mention that? I don't think she did.
They're at the TV station.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Well, Skye doesn't know they're there.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think so. Or does she? So Pull House is hunting around for clues. Whit tracks down Jason and Jillian, and by that I mean Jillian sends a calendar, and it has the last, like, several months minus December circled, or just, like, the only months in the calendar. Yes. It spells Jason. He figures out where Jason is because he's told. And then a couple minutes later, he's not surprised by the whole Jillian thing. I didn't think he would be, honestly, which is why, like, I never talked about his reaction last week, because he reacted basically exactly like how I thought he would, where Jillian was like, I'm a spy, and he's just like, yeah, okay.
This might as well happen.
Yeah. And then Connie knocks on the door. And then Jillian's just like, Whit, you fool, you led her right here. And then Connie's like, Jillian, I was following you. And Jason's like, Jillian, you fool, you led her right here. Which is so good.
It was a very good moment, yes.
And then we get Connie reactions, which are plentiful, which I assumed they would be. Whit and Connie reacted exactly like how I thought they would. And Jillian has some fun bits where Connie was just like, you acted like this, you didn't know this and this and this, and you would argue with me about stupid stuff. And Jillian was like, and it was funny. Like, Your Honor, I did it for the bit. Which is Good. Love that for her.
Yeah.
There were a couple things Connie mentioned where I was kind of hoping Jillian would be like, okay, but I was right though, and Connie would just be like, no, you. I wanted that to happen. It didn't.
But Connie, birds are mammals.
Okay, but like, Devin, Dev.
Yes.
I don't want to say what I was about to say since you've already been teasing me for the last several days about something else. Should I say it?
Well, I assume you're going to say you thought birds were mammals.
Okay, when that line came up and there's like, you argued for half an hour that birds were mammals, I was just sitting there and I was just like, you know, like that meme where it's like the guy and he looks really confused and there's like all the question marks.
Yeah, Lemmy, I'm familiar. The like defining synapomorphic characters of a mammal are that
they got fur,
that they have hair,
birds have hair,
they have feathers.
I feel like that should count as hair.
It's not hair. They have hair, and they lay live young, except for 3 species of monotremes.
Some mammals have eggs.
For 3 species of monotremes, of 2 species of echidna and the platypus, and they lactate. Birds are sauropsids, so reptiles, basically, a subset of reptiles.
So you're telling me that, like, a bird is more closely related to a crocodile?
Do you not recall people say literally all the time that like T-Rexes became chickens and whatnot? That, like, birds are just modern dinosaurs. It's a thing people say all the time. Yeah, because they're sauropsids.
So like they said that, and I was just like, but like, why were you arguing? I was just like, but Jillian's right.
It's like when I had a coworker one time, and she was like, "Fish aren't animals," and I was like,
"Okay, you can't compare me to that."
No, I'm not.
You can't compare me to that.
This is a lot worse.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's on the same level. But yeah, I was because I. Oh, sorry.
What was her reasoning?
Sorry, it was birds. It was birds because it was before the penny.
Wait, she said fish aren't
birds
animals
aren't
or
animals.
birds? Okay. What was her reasoning?
I think
they're robots, not animals.
No,
I've seen Jurassic Park.
I was like, you know, she was probably thinking like there's like birds and animals and fish, thinking of animals as things that live on the land because it was when I worked at Dairy Queen.
Birds do live on
she was.
The land.
You're right.
This conversation is so much for me to take in right now.
It was it was when we knew the penny in the next couple of years was going to be disappearing, and I was like trying to get pennies from different years, and in particular, the one I've been looking for was the 1967 like centennial one.
Oh, are you still trying to do that?
Well, there aren't pennies around anymore.
Yeah, but I have an entire massive container of pennies.
Yeah, so did I. I had them from like every year all the way back.
Do you want it?
No.
Okay, I don't have anything to do with it.
You can still cash them out, I think, at the bank.
Oh, that's true. Okay, sorry, continue.
Anyways, it was like the 1967 coins, they all have different Canadian animals on them. So there's a rockhopper dove, I think, or there's some kind of bird on the penny.
That was her reasoning. It was like birds are rocks.
And so I was like, I took the penny out of the cash register because I found one, and I put like a penny from my wallet in, and I was explaining like I swapped these out because like
she was like, you're like birds are animals, and she like took it. She's like, this is a coin, Devin.
So see, they puzz and peep. I was like, all the centennial coins have animals on them, and she was like, birds aren't animals. I was like, what? And she's like, they're not animals, they're birds. I was like, if they're not animals, then what are they? Plants, fungi, bacteria, or protists? And she was like, anyways, Jillian, they're poring over the transcripts, and Jason's like, oh yeah, I got the launch codes. This is because of the submarines, and I have the launch codes to all the nukes in the Indian Ocean, because of course he does.
This last 5 minutes has been so much for me. I hope you realize that. Why does all this keep happening to me whenever we're recording? I feel like Griffin McElroy. This must be what it feels like to be Griffin
That's
McElroy.
exactly what it feels like, yes.
Um, okay, so, they keep trying to figure out, like, how to keep Jason safe, what's going on, and that kind of stuff. Pull House he goes back to talk to Skye more, try and figure out what's going on. Blah, blah, blah. Everyone eventually realizes that there's like an agent. This is kind of where I got confused, partially because I think I was just sitting listening before this, and then I had to go
Water the
water the
plants.
plants. Whenever I say plants for the past couple weeks, because I rewatched that Avo Ravo plants
anytime
video,
I say plants in the last 2 years, I think of that video.
plants. Okay. Watering the plants.
Literally, I cannot say the word plants without
just
thinking
fisted my veggie straws.
my blueberries.
Oh.
Anyways.
They said he won't be someone's second choice. Watering the plants. Oh. I just really love plants. Oh, me too.
So,
okay.
What happens with the plot, Victoria?
So there's like an Agent 1 and 8? Was that the other number?
Nope, there's only one number. The chairman was talking to Agent 1 at the end of the last episode. And they were referring to the other person who was Agent Cobra Orange.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, so who was the group that found out it was Skye? It was like the cabin group, right?
What?
Or like the not cabin.
Jason,
Jillian,
yeah.
Whit, Connie.
They called the number from the logs of this nuclear scientist, a disgraced nuclear physicist, and it was a high schooler. and it was.
Are you going to explain how they know each other? No. That's the crazy part.
That's the plot of album 73. And it went to Skye's voicemail, and everyone was like, "What?" Or sorry, they went, "Whoa!"
Like beat?
Yeah, like beat.
What?
It brought my heart such infinite joy when he made the exact same sound in Dream Drop Distance. And I was like,
oh, yeah, and they also do like their poses sometimes.
They do their poses.
In Dream Drop Distance.
And then he calls him by his name, and Beat's like,
oh. It's so good. It's so
good. The scene with the Dream Eater behind them getting fed up while they're arguing.
It's really funny.
Yeah. Anyways.
Oh, Dream Drop Distance, Tui Gang, my beloved.
So that is this episode. So we open, Pull House is getting information about things that are happening. Dr. Russ calls him, and he was like, it was a man's voice from the burglar. And I was like, he said, I was like, that means either Jillian had someone else perform the actual break-in, because before we were still sure at this point Jillian was the one who did the break-in. We're like, so either Jillian had some guy break in, or she has a very good impression of a man's voice, or Dr. Rusk was lying because
she's multi-talented.
He said in the first episode that the thief didn't say a word, they just came at him and conked him. And I know his memory was hazy at that point, but he was like explicit. He seemed pretty sure about that point. But we since found out, like, oh no, Jillian wasn't the one who broke in at all. So,
2 things I feel like I should say real quick. One, relating to the episode, I think it's kind of crazy that Skye just like answered her phone and was just like, "Hello, Skye Feldstein." Like,
okay, listen.
Like, was that her personal number? Because I feel like she shouldn't have done that. That was her voicemail,
Victoria.
Okay, but still, shouldn't it be like a burner phone?
Here's the thing, right? My mind was blown. I was like, I'll get to this. I can talk about it sooner than later, because I wrote my notes for the episode, and I wrote one note about like Skye, that's crazy, and made a joke about it. And then last night I was folding laundry and I thought about it for a second, and then I suddenly had all these revelations.
I did also think like it could be a red herring,
and I was like,
it might not be Skye, and they just redirected it to her. But that seems like a weird thing. It would be a weird coincidence.
I thought about it, and then suddenly everything clicked in my head, and I was like, all these little things that seem so weird to me, they actually all make complete sense because of each other.
My hands are blue still. Other thing I wanted to say, just so it doesn't look like I'm one of those like anime characters that just has really, or like Marnette
No.
Dupanchang, who just like, is the hair blue or is it just dark? My hair is blue because we never actually addressed it. The only clue was Iron Man 3,
What
but
more what more clue would anyone
that's
need?
such an inside joke that because no one's ever seen Iron Man 3. That yeah, my hair is blue.
Um, do you want me to jump to my thoughts on the Skye thing, or should we?
You know what? Yeah, I do.
Okay, so when they first said it, I was like, "Really, Skye?" And then I was like, "Oh, the TV station hoodie," because we realized earlier in the episode they're like, "Oh, Jillian didn't steal the hoodie; it went to some other guy. So did that guy get it for Jillian, or like what's going on?" And then we find out that like the burglar handed something off to Mo, who was like the big non-talking guy at the cabin. I was like, is Jillian working with Mo, or was it someone else who broke in? Uh, and then we find out like, oh, the TV, so it didn't have to do with Jillian at all. It was Skye. Skye's working with them. So basically, they're like, we have all of the call logs and we know who these people are, and these numbers are untraceable, but we're pretty sure these are all Agent One, and we call them, they're all disconnected. He was using burner phones, obviously, but this is the number that comes up over and over again that is associated with Agent Cobra Orange, which is also a very goofy name, which is also something I thought was weird, but all fits into the same thing.
Maybe think of like a GI Joe villain,
Exactly what I thought of, yeah, because Cobra, but yes.
or like a Street Fighter
Yeah.
villain.
Um, so they're like, okay, well, we'll just try calling the number. And for some reason, they give the phone to Connie. And after they dial, she's like, what should I say? And they're
She
like,
likes to feel included.
yeah, but they didn't even go over what she should say on the phone before calling the number. Anyways, it goes to Skye's voicemail.
Okay, even if they did, Connie would be like, hi.
So I was like, oh, the TV station hoodie, Skye, that makes sense. That's where the other connection to the station comes from if it wasn't Jillian. And I was like, I know Guy was never able to do a great job at funding the studio, but I never thought his daughter would have to turn to nuclear terrorism to make ends meet.
I mean,
Quality,
you do what you gotta.
Quality, but cheap. And then I thought about it, and I was like, so I thought about Skye Feldstein, and it's actually way more interesting than I gave it credit for, because there's a lot of there's little things about it, like, oh, it's ironic that Jillian's safe house is the building that's owned by a major enemy player, and Jillian interviewed for a position under Skye, who may or may not have known at the time who Jillian really was. That is, like, interesting, but I'll chalk that up to, like, writer's plot convenience and stuff like that, dramatic irony.
I would say maybe Jillian was onto Skye, except for she seems surprised.
Exactly. Well, I had that same thought. I was like, maybe she went there to scope it out, but Jillian was not expecting the fact that Skye picked up that phone. Or didn't pick up that phone, but you know what I mean. So here's the really interesting thing. I started...
Maybe they were just surprised it was the voicemail. They're like, what kind of supervillain leaves their voicemail?
So I started to think about, how would Skye Feldstein, the generational owner of Odyssey Channel 10's news station and TV station, become Andromeda's Agent Cobra Orange?
I was about to make a joke how the chairman and Skye are somehow the same person, but there's not a single letter in common between Skye and chairman.
We don't know his real name. Maybe Guy Feldstein with... Anyways, so it's interesting because Skye is a relatively new character. We've only heard her a couple of times, and normally that would make me think like, oh, her character was planted shortly in advance in preparation for this saga, and...
What if Agent Orange, Cobra Orange was Margaret Faye?
They had to bring it back around. So I would think like, oh, she was planted, and they put her in the show a little bit early to seed her into the story, and like she's actually, with a name like that, she's this crazy assassin with a history of espionage, and Andromeda.
Espionage.
Yeah, Andromeda planted her in Odyssey as part of their machinations, but she is a new character, but her roots in Odyssey and at the station are very old because Guy first showed up in album 23 in I Want My BTV. So unless she stole her identity to become Skye Feldstein, she really did grow up in Odyssey and inherited Channel 10 from her dad. So that leads us to the question, how did she get recruited and why? And my guess, honestly, and as soon as I thought about this question, I was like, it makes so much sense.
Radio Waves TV.
So much
connection?
sense. It seems like a major coincidence that Andromeda's boots on the ground agent in Odyssey works at a TV station. Like,
yep. I saw where you were going there. I saw where you were going.
The thing that Novacom began as in Odyssey, and we know Andromeda is a mega corporation, and one of their main areas was broadcast. And then I realized, oh, Skye is Bart Rathbone.
So what I'm getting from this is Andromeda is Disney and Skye is ABC.
No, what you're getting this. Skye is Bart Rathbone and Andromeda is Blackguard, because Blackguard owned the Webster development firm. He used it to buy the Electric Palace in Odyssey, and because he owned it, he was able to get Bart and Rodney to do his bidding in the town and spy for him. In the same way, I think that Andromeda either owns or has connections to Odyssey's Channel 10 station because they're a broadcast mega international corporation, and they were able to use those connections or the owning to financially leverage it so that Skye was forced to help them out. I don't think
that does make sense.
I don't think she has a spying background. I don't think she has a long history with Andromeda. I think they needed an agent in town to be someone who is friendly and someone that people already knew so they would trust.
Friendly. She's not
friendly. They needed someone, a friendly face, like someone people already know, like, oh yeah, you're not some outside stranger who moved here and maybe you could be a plant. They're like, you've lived here your entire life. We know your family. I think they needed someone like that they could control. And as the owner and manager of the TV station, she was the easiest target for them to get control of. And honestly, I think that the comical ostentation of her code name goes to show that she's not a spy. They asked her to come up with a code name, and she was like, what sounds cool and cinematic? Agent Cobra Orange. She's not a spy. She's playing pretend to be a spy, and that's also why she didn't use a burner phone. That's why they were calling her through her normal landline, because she's not an agent or a mastermind. Mm-hmm. She's just a goon that they had to appease to get cooperation, and so that's why they're calling her on her normal phone, and she has a goofy name because they were like, we are going to treat you as like super powerful, high-ranking person because, we need you to be doing this and stuff because you were in a role that let us get control.
Gopher.
Exactly. She's their patsy, really, is what it's going to come down to in the end.
So we don't know who won is still, is that correct?
No, I mean, we heard his voice. He was some, older British man, kind of British. What if it's Dr. Rusk? It sounded like it could be Dr. Rusk doing a voice.
I miss Richard.
Richard's Dr. Agent 1. Dr. Agent 1.
I miss Richard.
Anyways.
I don't have many other thoughts.
Yeah, so that's what I put together with Skye, and I was like, that actually makes a lot of sense.
You know what? That does make sense.
Because I was like...
I don't want Skye to be a bad guy. I was kind of like...
Well, Bart and Rodney,
I heard that.
I feel like
I do like that more.
She isn't doing it because she has a choice, right? It makes so much sense because I was like, like you said, it's really weird that they're like, oh, these lines are all disconnected and they're all burner phones and stuff. And they're like, we'll call the other number. And it just goes straight to her normal personal voicemail where she says her name. And we're like, okay, that seems a little convenient.
Yeah.
And the weird code name that, and stuff like that is like, this all seems so strange. And why Skye Feldstein? And how would this happen? And it wasn't, when I suddenly thought, I was like, how would she even become that? Because she's lived here before. It's not like they planted her here. I was like, she works at the TV station. And then all of a sudden I was like, Andromeda, Novacom, TV station. They use that to take control of her, not in a mind control sense, but in a business and financial sense, whatever, blackmail.
Evil by obligation.
Exactly. And as soon as I realized that, I was like, oh, she's not like a super spy. She's just like someone that they needed to get help from. And that's why she's so bad at this. And that is why she is using her personal voicemail and not a burner phone and stuff like that. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
I think I should get points for figuring out where you were going as you were explaining. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's funny because as soon as I was like, and they own it, and that's how they can force it, and then all of a sudden I was like, it's exactly like Darkness Before Dawn. Like I was like, that's like it's literally like we've done this before.
They're gonna shut down the TV station and make it.
And then they're gonna give it to Edwin Blackard.
Edwin Blackard's like, please stop doing this, please.
After the chairman,
no, actually, he would be kind of into it. He'd be overwhelmed, but he'd also be like, I can broadcast myself.
It's only one channel. Anyways,
all of Odyssey will watch my performances. They don't have a choice.
It is still weird that Jillian was like, I'm gonna make my safe house at the TV station, and she was around when they discovered that the sweatshirt from the break-in at the antique shop was from the TV station, and she never voiced any concern or confusion about that, or like, hey, that's kind of weird, maybe I'm compromised, or at least not that she said. I assume the next episode might open with that as they discuss like the implications of Skye being a mole.
I am a little bit more chill about this episode after hearing your theory. I
felt like this feels weird and contrived, and then after I thought about it, because I was like, this is weird, and I feel like I should probably have more to say about it, and then after I thought about it while I was folding laundry, I was like, oh, I do have something to say about it. Oh, I have a lot of things to say about it, and then I typed out more about Skye than I did about the rest of the episode.
I was kind of started getting into it a little earlier while talking to you. I don't really have the words for it exactly, but I was almost like a little, I don't know, almost feeling a little burnt out on this album. I don't really know how.
No, I know what you mean.
Or like a little confused and tired, because I think it comes down to just like so much is happening so quickly, and also like one of my favorite characters is having a lot of stuff done with them, and I'm still
worried how it's going to shake out.
Processing it, and I'm a little concerned about what's going to happen next with her.
Yeah.
And I haven't quite like because we're doing this and because we're listening to it as it comes out, I have to like wait a long time, and I won't have like a properly formulated opinion on how I feel about all of it until I can listen to the ending.
Well, that's what the album review is for at the end, ultimately.
Yeah, which is like honestly how I feel whenever there's a lot of big changes about something I like in a series I like. Like, I felt the same way after Remind came out with like all the Quadratum stuff and all the Sora stuff. That made me like really frustrated, and I hadn't fully accepted it / been like, okay, I actively enjoyed this until the KH4 trailer came out, which is like a long time to be in like
years,
emotional limbo about something. That was the first time where I was like, okay, not only am I not extremely sad about the ending of KH3
but now I'm excited
anymore,
about what's coming.
I'm actually excited about what's going to happen next, because this looks really cool. And there have been like other series that have done stuff like that. It's just like, I need to know where you're going with this in order to properly decide if I like the new direction this is taking or not.
And in the last episode, I kind of voiced the same concerns to a degree, where I was like, this is all popping off so much faster than I was expected. I feel like things are ramping up at a velocity that it will not be able to sustain, and so we're going to end up going up, and then we're going to have like a lot of plateauing stuff so that there's room to still go up at the climax at the end. And I feel like that's what this episode was, especially because, I mean, look, Jillian not being who she said she was and Jason getting kidnapped both happened in the first episode. And then by the second episode, we'd already found out that the chairman of Andromeda is coming back after 20 years. So it's like, we're only a third of the way into it by the time that happens. So it's like, that's already a lot of escalation, and you can't
and also you compare like the chairman reveal at the end of the last episode to the Skye Feldstein reveal in this episode. I was just like, if I could have swapped, like, in terms of just like escalation, I was just like, why should I care?
I think that's a lot of why it felt that way, because the cliffhanger of the first episode and then the cliffhanger of the next episode.
Yeah, it's like Jillian is a spy, the chairman is back, Skye Feldstein might be evil. And I was just like, one of these things is not like the other.
Exactly. It felt like a huge de-escalation. And like I said, I was worried that would happen because it's like it feels like we're going to go up and then suddenly we're going to have to dip down so that we still have room to ramp up at the end. And I feel like that happened in this episode, but I feel like after I thought through it more, it's like, okay, I'm feeling more. It's like, it's not plateauing. Like it's slower, but once you dig into it, there's like power there's torque behind it. It's not steep, but there's power driving it. There's interesting ideas underneath.
I'm assuming it's like a slow burn kind of reveal.
So we see arguments between Skye and Pullhouse, and Skye explains like, oh yeah, one of the employees asked for the hoodie to give to her uncle or something like that, and his name was Maurice something, and I was like, is that a name that we know? It sounds familiar, but I think his name might have just sounded like Maurice LaMarche, and that's what I was thinking of. I don't think that's who.
I don't remember who Maurice LaMarche is.
The voice actor, like for the brain.
Okay.
So we find out that our dear Officer Stuberk is the one who set up the blind date between Skye and Pullhouse.
He's doing his best.
And he's like, I used the half your age plus 7 rule. And we find out how old Pullhouse is, and then he realizes that he accidentally went 10 years too old with his math. And so Skye's younger than I would have guessed then, if that's the case. So basically he thought 24 would be the age range when it should have been 34. So Skye is somewhere between those ages, I guess. And I realized, I was like, characters are showing up. I'm putting them into the character playlist. I was like, Officer Stuberk has actually been in more episodes at this point than Jillian, which feels very weird to me because it's so spread out.
Very emotionally upsetting for me, and it needs to be remedied.
Also,
and Jillian is
not for long. Like I told you...
If Jillian leaves, so do I.
Like I told you after we finished last recording, the last 2 episodes of Tell You Later were Katie talking to Marshall about stuff, and I left a comment on the first part, just, saying what a good job he's been doing with show running the plots that we have had lately, like Olivia's arc and stuff like that. And the other comment I saw on the episode was like, we love Officer Stu. And and it's funny thinking about like I know Marshall's voice when I hear it, and I think a large part of the instant recognition of Marshall's voice is thinking of it as Officer Stu Burke in the same way that I recognize Phil Lawler's voice as Dale Jacobs, or when he does his like guy, what's his face from Andy Griffith Show, where he's like, oh, I'm doing my nasally voice. When Phil Lawler does that voice, like, he does that for lots of, like, goons and sidekicks, or half of the characters on Jungle Jam. I guess that is what happened.
Okay, to be fair, every single male character on Jungle Jam, except for the narrator, sounds like that.
Yeah, because they're all Phil Lawler.
Every single lady character is like, come back and see us, come back and see us.
Yeah. Except for the narrator, because the narrator is Richard Maxwell.
Yeah.
Anyways, Marshall was talking about, like, being famous. He's like, only the absolute most dedicated of fans would recognize me. And he didn't mean... I was surprised when he revealed he didn't mean recognize my face. He didn't even mean recognize my voice. He meant just recognize my name. Only the most dedicated of fans would hear the name Marshall Younger and be like, oh, I know who that is.
What?
And Katie was like, oh, yeah, it makes sense because they'd actually have to listen to the credits at the end of the episode to know your name. And they told a story about how they were out one time.
It's weird to think that people don't do
You used to do that when we were on a shared iTunes, and it would save the place in the episode.
I used to do that when we were on a shared iTunes.
Yeah.
When they were episodes I'd already heard a bunch of times.
Yeah, but it was funny because we said it...
If it's an episode I've heard multiple
Yeah.
times, and I know there's like nothing special in the credits. I usually won't listen,
The funny
re-listen to
thing
the
about
credits,
it,
but I always will at least once.
the funny thing though is like you would stop it right before the end, and we had it set so like it would save the place in the episode when you go back to the trap, and so all of these episodes randomly would be set to like right at the end, and sometimes they would be like 5 seconds from the end, so I'd be like getting mom to listen to an episode.
So you just like listen to something and be like, ba-da-da-ba.
Well, no, sometimes there were ones where you stopped it before the end of the episode, but it was just a couple seconds of silence at the end, so we were listening to something with like single track per episode, but it's multiple parts. I think we were listening to the Green Ring Conspiracy actually, and we missed a whole track.
Yo, that sucks for you.
It happened.
Yeah.
It happened multiple times, and I was like, we definitely missed a scene." And I went back. I was like, "Yeah, we missed this entire scene because Victoria had skipped away from the track with 1 second left in it, and so it went from one track to this one and just played 1 second, and immediately went into the next. But it was just silence, and so you wouldn't realize it was skipping over sections of episodes."
That's really funny.
Anyways, Marshall and Katie were telling this story, and I know I should. Well, I didn't tell the other one on the podcast. I don't want to just retell the stories from someone else's podcast on here because you should go watch.
Link the episode.
Tell you later. But basically, talking about the famousness of Marshall's name, he was like, Katie and I were out somewhere at a restaurant or something. She was wearing an Adventures in Odyssey shirt, and a family came up to us, and the little girl was like, "Oh, I like your shirt," to Katie, and she was like, "Oh, you listen to Adventures in Odyssey?" And they're like, "Yeah." They're like, "You want to know something crazy? That's Marshall Younger." And they all went, and then he went, "You want to know something even crazier? That's Katie Lee." And I just love the idea of Katie being like, "Oh, you're fans of Adventures in Odyssey?" That's Marshall. And then putting it on him instead of herself, I thought was really funny. And then he was like, "But wait a minute. If they only know my name," or she was like, "I mean, if they only know your name from listening to the credits, they wouldn't know my name either unless they listened to the credits."
Yeah.
Because
okay.
And she was like, "They're not going to recognize, it's an audio show."
I feel like when it comes to like what the Odyssey actors look like, the ones that like stick in my mind the easiest are like easily Katie, Chris, and Will. Like those are the ones I can just like picture what they look like at any given time.
Yeah, I mean, I could picture other ones, but they're, very much them.
You see pictures of them more often than I do,
true.
and I have a bad memory for faces compared to you.
Anyways, Katie was like, "To be fair, they wouldn't know my name either unless they listened to the credits, and they wouldn't know what I look like because it's an audio show." And Marshall was like, "But your voice, Katie." And she was like, "Oh yeah, I didn't think about that." Which I thought was very funny. So, we get a calendar. Connie brings in the mail, and she's like, "There's something weird about this mail." And I was like, "Oh no, it's the anthrax. We spoke it into existence." But it is
There's something weird about this mail. I inhaled something and now I'm dying.
Yeah. She's like, "It's a calendar, but a bunch of the months are missing." And I was like, "That's weird." She was like, "It only has July through November." And I was like, that old chestnut.
Think of it.
People love to use the old Jason July through November thing in whodunits and riddles. Remember when we were in the escape room?
People like do that in escape rooms too.
Yeah.
I think that happened.
Well, like I said, riddles.
Was like
that was a riddle
thing.
in the escape room where it was like that, and I was like, "Oh, Jason."
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. On Off Topic a couple weeks ago, they were talking about what are names that you thought was really cool when you were younger that isn't, like, if you wanted to change your name, what it would be. And Gavin Free said, "When I was younger, I always thought if I changed my name, I would change it to Jason because the months July through November spell out Jason." And everyone was
When you started saying that, I thought you said Gavin 3 and not Gavin Free for a second. And I was just like, whose alias is Gavin 3 and who is Gavin 2?
Gavin wanted to change...
I was thinking like Jeremy would be Gavin 3 or something like that.
Gavin wanted to change his name to Gavin 3 when he was young to confuse people. Anyways, Jillian sends the thing to Whit so that he will know to come. Honestly, I expected Whit to be a little more surprised by the Jillian thing. Maybe he clocked it from the beginning. I don't know. Anyway, so we find out.
Adult life is already so weird. This man.
So we get Hal's Diner security footage from the alley because it's it's nearby.
Because
Triple
Hal's
J's.
Diner is the only other building in Odyssey next to it.
Yeah. Well, they mentioned. I think they mentioned in the first episode in Morning that they were going to get the security footage because they shared a back alley. So, anyways, they saw that
we're getting so many details lately on the location of Hal's Diner.
Yes, we are.
It's because it's the most important building in the town.
It's true. So we see that the burglar from Triple J's handed things off to Mo, and they recognized him because he's locked up after they found the cabin in the state park that we've never heard of before. Which means it wasn't Jillian after all. It turns out. So then she didn't plant the sweater in the dumpster. It means either she had seen the sweater there beforehand while investigating, but she didn't want to touch it because she needed the police to find it, and so she left and then came back later and was like, sweater, who would have guessed this is here? Or she was just smart and looked in there. My guess is she already knew it was in there because she had already been doing reconnaissance, and so she just needed to conveniently find it, but she wasn't the one who actually put it there. I was like, alternatively, Jillian was involved and she was working with Mo because she is bad after all.
No.
And then
this album is going to end with Jason asking Jillian out
to marry him
on a spy date.
And they have to ask Connie to perform this ceremony while they're in the midst of a big spy fight like Pirates of the Caribbean 3.
I want this album to end with Jason going, this was really nostalgic doing all this spy stuff. I think I've kind of missed it a bit. Maybe I should go back to the NSA.
Takes out her
and then
bottle.
Jillian laughs in his face, just full on guffaws in his presence and goes, no. And then he's like, do you want to go on a date? And she's like, yes.
So Connie shows up to the hideout, and they get the, Wit is there, and then they hear a knock at the door. And I was like, oh no, it's one of the bad guys. And they're going to show up, and they've been followed, and they're going to open the door, and there's going to be a gun pointed at them, and this is bad. But then it was Connie, which is surprising, but then I was also imagining, what if they opened the door, and, Wit, and, there's a knock at the door, and Wit and Jillian and Jason, all turn, and they're, guns pointed at the door, and the door opens.
I did also wonder for a second when it was Connie, if someone was either following Connie, or someone
disguised as Connie.
Or someone was just like, Connie, I need you to just, go knock on that door, and then say hi to them, and then I need you to come back, or else I'm gonna murder you or Jules or something like that. Just, get Connie to open the door so other people
can see inside.
Either go inside themselves or
roll a little spy drone, a remote control spy drone on the ground through the door.
Was Jason in there? And she'll be like, yeah, he was. Don't murder me or my sister. I don't know.
And that's part 4, written by Victoria, and everyone loves it.
Part 4, written by Yabadi Yabada.
So Connie tailed Jillian, and it was very funny, and Jillian and Jason are sassing each other about it, and I was just living in the moment, and it was excellent. Because Jillian was sassing Wit about it. She was like, we weren't followed, were you? And she was like, I followed you. And Jason's like, oh, it looks like you were followed after all.
I had a moment like that today where, you know how whenever we can't find something, Mom's like, I'm going to look for it, and if I find it, you owe me $5.
Uh-huh. Like every mother in the world, yes.
Yeah, I had a moment like that a couple days ago where I was like, I can't find these boxes of granola bars in the freezer. And she's like, if I find them, you owe me $5. And then she went downstairs, and I looked on the wrong shelf, so she found 8 or something like that. And she's like, I'm going to charge you for every single... She's like, I'm going to charge you $5 for every box. And I was like, no, you're not. And then I went upstairs, and I've been reading so much Sakoku fan fiction lately. She was just like, you owe me so much money. And I was like, you know what it is? It's just that I'm so much taller than you. I couldn't see all the way down there. It's just so low to the ground. And she was like, yeah, whatever. and then today she wanted to like watch this thing that she had on the box. And then she was looking for the Apple TV remote, and I was watching some stuff with my friends yesterday. And she's like, did you use it? And I was like, I don't think I did. And I opened the drawer and lifted, like, something and immediately found it. And she's like, oh, it was in the drawer the whole time. I didn't see it. I was like, ugh, you owe me $5. She was like, shut up. And she smacked me in the arm.
So Connie comes in, and she was like, oh, Jason, weird. It's some sort of spy thing. I was so worried. Jillian, what are you doing here? And then there's a...
Jillian, whoa.
And then there's a pause, and she was like, no, the whole time? Really? Again? Really, Jillian? And then she was like, you're an intelligence agent. Really? You're telling me the word intelligence is in your job title?
So mean.
And I was like, Constance Kendall.
So mean.
That's rude.
She's so mean
She's
to me.
Bulking at the fact that intelligence is a word in Jillian's job title. That is so disrespectful.
The disrespect. You come to me on the day of my girl's spy reveal, on my day of 28 hours, and disrespect my girl.
We get another great scene of Connie bringing up things that Jillian has said and done, and the birds are mammals thing, and Jillian was like, okay, that was a little bit fun.
Which is something we all know.
A mistake we could all make.
Yep.
And I was so glad to learn, like, okay, yes, Jillian is further tamping down. Like, yes, I had so much fun coming up with all of these. I had so much fun, like, playing this role and, like, acting like this and, like, really getting into it. And she's like, oh, this is so much fun. And Connie's like, you almost convinced me. It is, I was like, it is still our Jillian under there. She's real and it's great and I love her. I really like the idea that we said before, where it's like her normal voice too and everything, like that's her real voice, and she's only been acting like this to help keep Jason calm through this crisis. And then we find
Jillian at her core is just a silly, goofy guy. Just goofy, silly mood.
Yeah.
Silly, goofy mood. And like I just need that to be brought so deeply to the surface once her spy persona is revealed around people who know she's a spy.
Yeah.
Before the album ends.
So we finally Jillian starts explaining, like, okay, here's what I think the actual plot is. And obviously they don't know anything relating to Andromeda so far. But she's like, there's this disgraced nuclear physicist that Jason took down in, like, Switzerland, and they couldn't arrest him, but they took away all of his stuff, and they were like, he's still been in contact with these people and stuff, and there's Agent Cobra Orange and Agent 1, and he donated, like, a huge amount of money from his thing to this, like, medical research place that could be a shell company, and they're like, they do all sorts of, like, medical technology research, and I was like, oh, like, say some kind of therapeutic radio wave stuff, maybe, perhaps. And they're like, here's the name as a thing, and it's run by this lady and stuff, and we'll cross-reference people of interest with all of their past employees. And Whit's looking through it, and he was like, oh, Lily Graham used to work for them. I was like, Lily Graham was the chairman all along. It all made sense. I knew the whole time.
There's also no letters in common between chairman and Lily Graham. Why are there no letters in common between this guy's name and any other character? Chairman.
First name, Mr.
Chairman is actually his first name. Is going to be.
Oh, I was going to say Mr. is his first name and Chairman is his last name.
Mr. Chairman.
Please call me Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman was my father.
Mr. Chairman.
So Jason pulls Whit aside and he was like, this is a hunch, and so we shouldn't tell anyone because why would we do that? You know, Jillian won't want to chase it down because it could be a lead, so we probably just shouldn't say anything to her at all. I think that's a good idea, says Jason Whittaker. But he's like, maybe. I've been doing a little moonlighting, consulting for the U.S. military on a secret submarine fleet in the Indian Ocean armed with nuclear munitions, nuclear ordnance. And I'm like,
Jason
of course you have, you stupid
Whittaker.
idiot.
This is why Jillian was sent to spy
This is
on him and
literally
babysit him.
the reason that Jillian was sent here was to
Jason's
stop him
like, I just don't understand why Jillian was sent to look after me. And she's like, why do you
I don't
think?
even work there anymore. Why do the bad guys keep coming for me?
Guys.
Just because I still know active nuclear launch codes for the U.S. military.
Jason's like, guys, I just really feel like I'm being bullied and it's not very fair to me. And they're like, Jason, are you freaking kidding?
So Jason takes a nap because he's had a bit of a day. And then he wakes up and it's 3 a.m. now. So it's like, we are at the witching hour.
We are at the witching
time
hour.
is really
Let's go.
flying by. We still have 3 episodes left.
How many hours has it been, do you
Well, we
think?
started at like, I'm going to guess 8 a.m. or so.
Yeah.
So we've passed 19 hours or so of our 28. So we have like 9 hours left to go.
I guess it makes sense that like more time will pass in the first half, and then the last half is more concentrated.
But
bonus points if one of the episodes, probably not the last one, but maybe a bit of the last one is in real time.
Yes, I hope so.
That'd be kind of fun.
Just like the last 60 seconds of like Novacom to launch date and time.
The last little bit of Novacom, like Exit, is like I was about to say Exit is one of the best episodes in all of Novacom, and like the bit with Agnes and Tom at the end is absolutely beautiful, and the sound design on the Imagination Station blowing up is absolutely breathtaking. But
it's also very funny when Nick mops the ceiling to block the cameras, and they're like, "Oh, Nick, funny. That's that idiot."
I have already said all of that quite at length. If any of you feel like going to our top 5 favorite episodes video, because I believe Exit is in my top 5, if I remember correctly.
Maybe. I don't remember. Anyways, Jason, he wakes up. See, the thing that's weird to me is not just that there's so little time left out of the 28 hours, but like half of the time left is the times of the day when most people are normally sleeping. And so, obviously people can be awake, and they are awake. It's just like, man, they've already been awake for so much of this, and Jason just took a nap. But it's like, it's harder for a lot of things to happen and lots of plot to move, I feel like, between the hours of 3 and 7 a.m. Because most of the people in this episode have been up for almost 24 hours at this point. And I don't think they're getting sleep in the next couple episodes. Unless they get knocked out, which is probably the only way that's going to happen.
I could see that happening.
So Jason...
like, pretty easily.
Jason's like, we can't tell anyone because they'll be angry at me for doing my consulting work, is the real reason he doesn't want to tell Jillian or the NSA about it. But he was like, I mean, they did ask for my contacts at the Pentagon, and the nukes can only launch if they have launch codes that I know, and also launch codes that a general at the Pentagon knows. So I was like, of course you know the launch codes off the top of your head. Like, I mean, I know that
why wouldn't you?
I know that alone isn't enough, but still, it seems really secure, guys, that someone who is not an agent anymore, just this old guy who works at an antique shop in the middle of nowhere, he's like, at least I know half of the nuclear launch codes for all of these subs on the other side of the planet.
Hey Dev, I was just checking if I had my top 15, I think it was, or top 10, just like a picture of it saved in my files. And I found something I totally forgot existed that I made a long time ago. My my bingo card for the movies,
Yeah.
which we haven't used in
I know. I still have my copies of it,
forever.
and every time we do a movie, I remember after the fact that we didn't do the bingo card. So that's about it for my notes for the episode. From here, Julian gives everyone all the notes and papers, and they do the stuff I said. They track down, they look at the company stuff, and they're like, Lily Graham, and there's this medical company, and maybe there's a connection here, and obviously that ties two ways that it could be, tied to Andromeda, because of the RWS research. And then they look into the phone numbers. They're like, we know about Agent Orange and Cobra 1 and...
What does RWS stand for again?
Radio wave study.
Radio, right. My brain was like, Regis...
Whacker.
Something...
Well, because you're thinking of the RBG Foundation.
That's what it is.
Which is Blackguard's thing.
Yes.
The Regis Blackguard Foundation that he used to acquire Edgebiter.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what happens in the episode. And so there was a lot of plot. There was a lot of new names that we've never heard before, but it's still, you could see like the plausible connection to how Andromeda would be tied to this. I don't know then if they are actually after something that's still related to the Nova box and the RWS, or if this is...
What if they're after like a Blackguard related thing?
They're after the cloth.
They're after the cloth. They're after Rukuta.
Yeah, or if it is just like, hey, we want nukes.
It could be nukes, it could be revenge, it could be they're trying to get the Imagination Station again, although why now? I don't know, maybe they wanted to get multiple things at once.
Yeah, I mean, there's maybe the part of me, just like the watch getting stolen from the store, I can't help but feel that it is entirely possible and plausible that Jason getting asked in the safe house about his Pentagon contacts could simply be a red herring to throw him off of what they're actually trying to get.
Yeah. I don't know.
Although the doctor that this is all connected to was a guy who was like working on like nuclear weapons. So.
True.
That connects. Maybe they're going to make a nuclear Nova box. They're going to do radioactive mind control. The radioactive wave study.
All the kids who use it get like radiation sickness, and they get like superpowers.
That's their plan, is to make a super evil league, a super villain league with their radiation.
I love Jace Mouse. He is one of the first people who would fall prey to the Nova box if it came back.
Yes.
I say that lovingly.
I mean, yeah,
I say
it's true.
I say it very lovingly that he would get manipulated the heck out of.
I thought you were going to say he would be one of the first people to turn evil after he gets superpowers.
No. Either that or unless all of his history of being manipulated
has given him the perfect skills to overcome it.
Has given him, like the right skills to kind of like recognize
the mental fortitude.
Sometimes when they're like, Jay, how did you withstand getting manipulated by Novacom? He's like, it's all the trauma.
What, like it's hard?
Like Jay and Buck coming together with Jules to just like destroy Novacom kind of in the same way that like Mandy and...
No, here's what I thought of is the last episode of Steven Universe proper, when Blue Diamond blasts the sad wave and everyone backs back down, and Buck and Jay are both Lapis, where they're like, I felt worse.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's the trauma.
The trauma. I'll also give that one to Jules too, because I feel like she's gone through enough.
She was
to
raised
also-
by both Bill Kendall and her mother.
Yup. Yup.
By
that
both
is a
Bill,
true statement.
separately by both Bill and January Kendall.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember if they ever established that her name is actually January, or
We all know what it is.
or if it's just Jan, short for Janet.
Could you imagine if Bill met her and she introduced herself as Jan and he was just like January, and then when they get married it was like Janet,
Janet,
and
whatever.
then he was just like, we need to divorce.
That's why he couldn't remember their marriage. Remember, he was like, I can't even remember what order she was in the marriages, because it was like a Kardashian, like 27-minute long marriage.
The second he heard her real name, he's like, I'm sorry, I can't do this. It's not me. It's definitely you and your bad name.
It all makes sense now. We're unraveling all the mysteries tonight.
That's so funny.
All right, I think
Devin,
Yeah.
Devin, I'm so funny.
we're both so funny.
We are.
Should we wrap this one up and move on to dusk? I guess dawn. Dusk is the night. Move on to dawn. I'm going to assume the next episode is.
Yeah. 11sies.
A little early for that, probably.
I want the last episode to be called 11sies.
I know. Well, they have to do something so it doesn't copy morning.
Second breakfast. I think 11sies would be
Once more.
perfect.
Wait, once more is already an episode. One more around the block again.
One more time with feeling.
Yeah.
Like the Regina
Once.
Spektor song. Or the Buffy episode where they have a musical number for the whole episode.
Yeah.
That I've heard a couple songs from.
Anyways, let's talk about the next episode now. Okay, we're talking about episode 949 now, Dead of Night, written by Kathy Buchanan.
You know what, Devin?
This is the first episode title that I have incorrectly predicted out of the previous two that weren't the first one.
You know what?
What?
You know what? Last episode, I kind of wasn't feeling it as much. This episode, though, I was feeling it, Mr. Krabs. I don't know about you. I was definitely feeling it.
Things are happening.
I was making breakfast while I was listening to this one because I am under contract to always say what I was doing while I listen to an episode. And during the latter parts of the episode, at one point, I had to turn towards the fridge and just bang my head on the fridge. I believe it was when Julian said, I think we should arrest Jason. And I went, no! So, on that note...
I finished this episode, and I just wrote a few I was like, ah!
Yeah,
They're
I
in
felt
his
that.
brain, Victoria. His brain is as spongy as ever.
Okay, so in this episode, we start off with Pull House, and...
Well, we start out with, I think, with the crew, the gang first, being like, Skye, because they just had phoned her.
We start off with the crew talking about Skye, trying to figure out what's going on there, speculating different things, and trying to figure out, like, how to keep tabs on Skye. Connie realizes that Skye came into Wit's End, like, the day before, or a couple days before or something, used a notepad, so then Connie goes back to grab the notepad from Wit's End to see if there's, like, anything that can be gleaned from it. And we see Pull House. He runs into Skye. He wants to ask her a couple more questions. She has to go because of a family emergency. Her mom lives in, I think she said, like, Chicago?
Well, I mean, allegedly she has a sick mother in Chicago.
But interesting tidbit. I thought you might find that interesting.
It might not be true. Her mother might not be alive.
It might not be true, but if it is, then...
I mean, I would hope there's at least some grain of truth of that because she might not know how much Polehouse knows about her family. Right?
Yeah,
If her mom was
that's
dead
true.
and she's like, my mom is sick in Chicago. And he's like,
Yeah, if
no,
she wants
she
her cover
isn't.
story to hold up,
Yeah.
then so she gets the heck out of there like
Yeah, she's
immediately.
like peeling rubber.
She just tears out of there, and Pulaski is like, "Holy crap!" Um, so then Wit talks to Pullhouse a little bit after that, following that storyline, and basically
He's
lets
like, by the
Pullhouse
way,
know
Skye's evil.
that Skye's real sketchy. And Pullhouse is like, "Okay, I know what her car looks like. I saw what direction she drove in. I'm gonna try and tail her." So that's the last we see of Pullhouse for the episode.
No, because they trace her to the
Or
hospital.
oh, right. And Burke is doing his best. I love him a lot.
Officer Stu Burke was never previously written to be an idiot,
Yeah,
and so
he kind of was. Like, at least, like, ignorant or naive.
not like this is
Not
like
this level,
this is
but, like, very
beyond
naive.
David Harley, like absolutely
He's
clueless.
he's a baby.
I
He's
think
a
it's
little
funny
guy.
that this is a new character trait as far as I'm aware in this story, and so it makes me wonder if it was Marshall's idea to do this to himself or whether Kathy was having a bit of fun with him.
I think either option is funny.
I think they
Maybe
were both
both.
funny.
So Pullhouse is trying to figure out what is going on. I can't remember a bunch of details about what happens with him.
Basically, they look
now.
around for charging stations and they find her car at the hospital, and then he's like, Burke, you watch the car, I'm gonna go look inside the hospital for Skye, and then that's the last that we...
I'm thinking maybe they got some dirt on her. They're using the technology on someone close to her.
Well, the interesting
Can you imagine
thing
if it's
is...
Guy Feldstein, he's being mind controlled, he's in the hospital, they pulled an Armitage.
It is interesting. I mean, obviously, she didn't mean to run to the hospital. Otherwise, she probably wouldn't have brought her suitcase with her, or would have needed to drive so fast, right? I assume she's still heading out of town. But why did she stop at the hospital? Presumably, if she left her car, well, I guess it's not like a gas station, right? You can't just fill up and be gone in a couple of minutes. You have to sit time for it to charge.
It depends on if you're doing it free charge or you're paying for fast charge.
Well, even still...
I recently found that out because Jonathan drives his charge car.
But, I mean, even still, it's not instantaneous, right? It still takes a while to to charge up for, like, a long drive. So maybe that's why she went inside, but...
It still depends on how you're charging it, but
it's not like within 5 minutes. You're not going to be able to drive to Chicago on a 5-10 minute charge.
It charges it like crazy fast if you pay a bunch of money.
So I assume it's not a coincidence, though, either way that she went inside the hospital. So
yeah, no, I think she's there on purpose.
Obviously, there's someone in there that she's going to see. Who is it? I mean, here's the thing, right? We thought she was being blackmailed, she was being coerced and stuff. That may still be part of it, but they did also pay her $1 million, which you wouldn't have to do necessarily if you're blackmailing someone, right? So
maybe they don't know how to blackmail people properly.
It's Andromeda. I think they're probably pretty good at it.
They should know. I guess it's not technically Novacom, but
Connie did name drop them.
Connie did, and we'll get to that.
Yes. Anyways.
Right now, actually, because we're going back to that group. So Lily Graham calls the gang and starts telling them about her history working for the company.
She's like, surprise, I'm the most unethical character in the history of this show. And I was like...
Back when I was doing my, what's the word for it again?
Residency,
thank you.
I forget, did she say it was her research after her residency, or was it her residency?
It was her residency. Okay. So I'm being, like, pretty gentle on her. Residency is, like... Yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming you take what you can get. And she didn't know how bad it was when she started there.
okay, literally the concept, the one sentence summary of what they were trying to
Yeah,
do
so they're doing
is
mind
like
control.
is like war crimes.
They're like they're testing how to put like microchips in people's brains to do mind control, but like the initial way they present it is like we're trying to figure out like these different levels in their brain to see if they're like healthy, but
No,
also it can do
she
mind
said the
control.
goal was to read terrorist minds, which is
Uh,
already starting
that
out
is a war crime.
at a
That's against the
highly
Geneva
unethical
Convention.
place.
um,
That's why I say it's not
so
like, oh, this is, the Nova Box started out as like, oh, it helps amputees and stuff like that. It helps people learn and rehabilitate their minds faster. And then it moved to unethical usage. This started with like Guantanamo Bay waterboarding kind of stuff.
they're like, at least we admit we're unethical right from the get go. Unlike those shady guys at
Yeah,
Novacom.
I kept on wondering if she was actually going to say the word radio wave study because she kept on
I did too.
She kept on dancing around.
Yeah, and then Connie was just like, hey, that sounds like Novacom. And I was like, Connie, smartest person in
She
the
was
room.
like, it was based
No
on
one
this
else
other
said
medical
anything. They just
technology.
brushed over
Yeah,
that line.
and then the funding got pulled, but we didn't find out why. And I kept on waiting her to drop like one or two words, like keywords that would make someone be like,
yeah, like radio. She was just like electronic transmissions and stuff. I was like, you mean like radios? But I realized, and I also said to Mom right after I listened to this episode, that lots of people, even if they have heard the Novacom saga, might not necessarily have picked up on the whole remembering who the chairman is.
Well, that's
thing.
what I figured. I've been wondering this whole time, especially when
That's
Connie,
my thought process.
the
Because
way
like
that the
fact
line
that
was
Connie
written.
mentioned Novacom, some people who are listening might be like, "Oh, that does sound a bit like Novacom," but no one else commented on Connie's opinion, and Connie was the one who said it first, and not someone else. So it's probably not Novacom. So then later they can be like, "Oh, it was Novacom," or like, "Oh, I saw that coming."
The way that the line was written very much felt to me, I agree, like this is where you would be we're trying to help you clue in more if you didn't figure it out earlier.
The Connie saying like sounds like Novacom had the same kind of like gravitas given to it as mentioning Richard in something old, something new. Where it's just like it feels more like a little Easter egg or like a little more of a treat for the fans that it was mentioned and not like this is actually what's going on.
Yeah. She said it more like a passing comment and less like a deduction.
She sounded so bitter when she said like sounds like Novacom, which is like so much very warranted, even though everyone else
bitter as much as like, oh, like sounds like Novacom.
Well, like definitely disdainful of Novacom, which like even though but like I want to say like even though everyone else went through a bunch of horrible stuff during Novacom, I'd say Connie, out of the people in the room, definitely had it the worst. So I don't, and she probably thinks about Novacom more than the others do.
Yeah, I think that's on a daily
basis. So like, I like that she was the one who brought it up out of everyone in the room.
That
felt very fitting. And also, like I said before, her bringing it up doesn't, I'm so sorry, Connie, you're like my favorite character, but doesn't give it the same narrative weight as like Jason or Wit saying sounds like Novacom, because if Connie says it, it could be a passing comment. If Wit or Jason says it, that means it's definitively the answer, and they don't want to reveal that it is like 100% Novacom / Andromeda to the fans yet, who are unaware. So like, it felt like a smart moment to me. I'm so sorry, Connie.
It's funny because up until this episode, there was still the part of my mind where it's like, there's the very small chance that it isn't the chairman of Andromeda, and we're just...
no, I was fully convinced it was after we talked about it.
But it's one of those things where I'm like, what if we've jumped so hard on that assumption and we spent all this time talking about it, and then we're going to realize that we got blindsided? But it's also like the way that was like the cliffhanger scene of that episode. I mean, there was other stuff regardless about what they were saying about knowing where Jillian is and stuff that's still tense, but the fact that it ended on saying like dramatic pregnant pause, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
big music. I mean, obviously,
And also
that
the same voice actor, like you pointed out.
it only has weight if it is the chairman of Andromeda. So
Yeah. And so Jason starts talking about because they find out that like a missile was launched. It didn't like kill anyone or anything like that, but still bad.
it's still bad.
And
They're not,
Jason,
at least not all of them are nuclear, I guess.
Jason's just like, that's weird. I had a feeling that that's the one that would launch, which in retrospect,
Well, no, he didn't have a feeling about that specific sub. It was just part of the fleet. He was like, I had a feeling about that fleet.
Yeah. And which, like, in retrospect, oof, Jason.
Which he said at the end, he's like, that's why I've been thinking about them.
He's just like, it must be like a little nudge from God. I'm like, or a little nudge from the chairman.
I've also been thinking about greasely chips and birdhouses.
And so then Jillian, this was the moment where like they started talking about this, and Jason and Jillian is just like, you probably think it's stupid, don't you? And then this was the moment where, because we'd always had the debate over whether Jillian is a Christian
I wouldn't call
or not.
it a debate.
Well, like soft questioning. How about that? Because we never really had like a super definitive answer. This is one of those moments that I always use,
especially now that we know that so much of her stuff was an act. It's like, we knew she was going to church with Connie and Jules and stuff, but then it's like, well, all of a sudden anything could be part of the cover.
Yeah. And so like this is one of those moments in an Odyssey episode where if there's a character I like, I always try and figure out, like, I use whatever their reaction is to figure out if they're a Christian or not. Like if it's Jay or something like that, he's like, Bible. And you're like, okay, yeah.
You're like,
thanks, Jay.
I'm starting to deduce things about your character.
Let me think. But then Jillian is just like, oh yeah, I grew up like with my parents who were missionaries, and it was just like, Jason listening to this in rapt silence. I was just imagining his huge heart eyes, thinking back of his...
I didn't have to imagine them. I could literally hear them.
Yeah. His Mr. Darcy list, which is being fulfilled in front of his eyes, is Jillian speaks.
Yeah, and she's like, and that's why I joined the government, because I wanted to fight the bad guys. And that's where you go to fight the bad guys, is the National Security Agency of the United States of America.
And Jason's just like, that's why I joined too. It's also important to me. I was like, okay, Jason, calm down. And even though Jillian was more serious this episode, I'm definitely starting to like grow more used to how she currently is. It is also really cool to learn more of her genuine backstory stuff. Not that she didn't have those million jobs before, because it sounds like she did do quite a few of them, if not all, for different things. And
Connie was like, I thought you grew up in the circus. And Jillian's like, I never told you that. She's like, I know.
I just thought you did. And Jillian's like, that's not on me.
That's mostly on Jillian.
It is mostly on Jillian. But so Connie comes back. She's just like, my Nancy Drew decoder childhood class back when I was the Avenger or whatever. And then she like scribbled on the notebook, which she did it before she got back to the cabin. I was just like, Connie...
To the basement.
Yeah, I was like, Connie, good job for getting the clue and not getting kidnapped on the way. But I would have waited if I were her to like bring the notebook back and then try and like scratch it out. Because if she like did it wrong or something like that, it could have just completely destroyed all of that.
She's like, you need to scribble over it, right? And holds it like directly point down and scribbles over the whole paper.
She's like, why isn't it working? So she uses a pen.
Yeah. And what was on the pad of paper, Victoria?
It was launch codes.
No,
it was the name of the missile thingy that
the
fired.
Submarines.
Yeah, the submarine that fired. So then Jason starts looking at him and he's just like, oh, I know that, blah, blah, blah. That's the one that I was worried about and the one that just fired. and this is another one, and this is another one. And then they start thinking about, like...
And then there was maybe a license plate. I believe it was OMH014, so 3 letters, 3 numbers.
And I'm both surprised and not surprised that you remembered that. Did you write it down or just memorize it?
I think I wrote it down just to see if something jumped out at me visually, because I was like, 014 are numbers that look like letters. Does it spell something if I like look at it? Like
404 is sight doesn't work.
That's true.
Is there a connection?
Yeah, I wrote it down and then I erased it. So no, I was not reading it out just now.
Okay. Mr. Book of Secrets. So I don't really remember how they get to this point, but they start talking about the symptoms that Lily mentioned.
Well, so they had talked to Lily, and then Jillian talks to Wit, and she was like...
Oh, right. Jillian starts saying that she thinks Jason might possibly be a plant, and she wants to get, like, Wit's...
Well, she's not saying he might be a plant.
She wants Wit's opinion.
She just wants him... She's like, we have to consider him, like, as a matter of protocol.
Yeah, because, like, everyone who knows the codes is under investigation, and Jason knows the codes, so technically he could be a suspect.
He also said he's been working on it for 10 years, which is a lot longer than I was expecting. He was like, I've been freelancing on this, so doing a little consulting.
And then Jillian's just like, wait, I need you to, like, answer this question for me of whether you think Jason is betraying us, like, as an agent and not a dad. And then Witch is like, he wouldn't do that. And Jillian's like, what? And he's just like, he might have done it. And so...
Yeah, answer it objectively. He would never. I know his heart, and your heart is made of bricks that you build as piece by piece every day and lay down with the mortar of prayer. And she's like, okay, if you were in my shoes, what would you think? He's like, I mean, he could have done it.
So they talk about other stuff.
And then Jillian gets the message about the fingerprints.
Back to the topic of if Jason, like, did it or not.
I think that's what happens, right? Jillian gets the information about this and that, and then she gets the notification about the fingerprints at the Pentagon.
Yeah, that, like, Jason was at the Pentagon.
Or his fingerprints were there.
Yeah.
For a second I was like, Jason has a twin brother. It's
and
Jerry.
His name is Jerry. It was Jana.
His older twin brother.
Monty. This is where Jenny's been all this time. So then Jillian's just like, Jason, were you at the Pentagon? He's like, no, I can get, like, literally anyone to confirm I've been here all week. And he's like, you can confirm I've been here all week. And she's like, no, I can't. I didn't see you for almost 24 hours between, like, Monday afternoon and Tuesday morning. And he's just like, that's because I was at an auction in Odington, which we haven't had Odington mentioned.
It's true. It was mentioned twice in this episode.
So...
did they... I want to say they mentioned it earlier in this album. Yeah, when they were talking about where Jason could have been held, because they said it was somewhere between Odyssey and Connellsville. And they're like, could be somewhere in Odington. And then they landed on that state park. It is funny because, I mean... by the end of the episode, we're like, oh, Jason's disappearance, probably, maybe... Well, wait, what day is this today, though? What day of the week is it? Jason was only knocked out very recently. So
Jason had the thing put in his head when he was kidnapped.
Yeah, it's been...
what they said.
And...
so that wasn't him at the Pentagon, I don't think.
No, it couldn't have been.
That was just his fingerprints planted.
I was like... how many days has it been? But I'm like, wait a minute, it's been less than 24 hours since this all kicked off. So there's no way
which means that thing activates, like, real fast.
Which means there's no way he's been from Odyssey. So if they got the codes from it being in his head and he was saying it in his sleep...
Also, wouldn't it, like, show? Like, wouldn't there be, like, an incision?
Well, they said it was injected, which is definitely where it
Wouldn't there be a mark?
Which is definitely where it reaches the point of comedic, like, this is... I mean, it was already like, oh, this isn't possible scientifically, but they're like, it can do all this, and it's so small you can put it in a needle to inject into someone, and that's where it goes, like, way beyond the realm of believability. If they had to inject it into your brain, they would have to go through the foramen ovale, so it would be like the back of the neck at the hollow of where the spine connects to the skull.
I mean, the next episode might start with them.
Yeah, so I mean, think about when you get like a needle, like even if there's basically no hair in the area, you still barely see a mark from a syringe, right? So if you do it somewhere where there's hair, it's going to be very difficult to make out amongst dark hair follicles and stuff like that. I don't think.
Yeah, but would you, even if you went like straight in,
Yeah.
wouldn't the skull be in the way?
Well, no, because there's the hole at the back. The hole where your spinal cord comes out and connects to your spine. That's why I'm saying that's why they'd have to go in the back, because there's the hole that your spine has to come out of.
I don't like learning
That's
about
why it's
biology.
called the foramen ovale. It's just
school.
the big oval hole.
Nah, no thanks.
Anyways, presumably that's what happened there. And it must have some kind of mic in it that is remote. I mean, obviously it needs remote like transceiving if they're, controlling.
It's like Inside Out. The chairman's like one of the emotions in Inside Out in Jason's brain.
But obviously it has like an actual microphone if they were hearing it, unless they weren't listening to him say it. They were reading his brain, but bringing it to the front of his brain was also making him sleep talk it as well.
Yeah, I don't really know. I feel like there's going to be a lot more explaining.
I feel like there probably wouldn't be very good sound quality on a mic if it was implanted.
It just sounds really muffled.
In the center,
like the chairman's like, "Oh, we can't."
It would be so deafeningly peaking if it was in the center of your midbrain and you're trying to hear everything you say.
All the electrical, like little firing things in his brain, just like short out the chip.
Yeah, that's how it works.
So they just see all his favorite soaps in his brain and nothing else. He got brain rot about his blorbos.
Yeah, they're like, Jason, we need you to think really hard about like fake launch codes and stuff like that. He can do like that World War II thing where they dropped all the fake intel and he just has to like fool them by thinking about false information and beam it into their computers. Do you think he can explode their computers with his brain now?
Do you think hard enough? If Jillian and Jason kiss, it will short out the thing. The power of love.
It's like She-Ra. It's like you're being controlled with your little chip thingy. You just need the power of love.
I've only seen like the first season and a couple episodes of She-Ra.
I assume you've been keeping up with the Ava Raybo.
I haven't. I stopped because I was like, I need to actually watch She-Ra. I already know too many spoilers about the end of the show.
So Jillian goes to arrest Jason.
And then Wit's just like, wait, Jason had a headache. He was knocked out. They must have put...
Lily found after this. That's how it came up.
Yeah, they must have put the chip in his noggin.
I like how they had that whole conversation with Lily while Jillian has like one handcuff on Jason's wrist. They're just like, freeze, stand there while they take
Jason's just like, I'm used to this. I've been incapacitated so many times. And let's be honest, it's not the weirdest thing Jillian and Jason have done.
We already talked about that when we did our album art prediction.
No, I'm just saying, even just not being innuendo-y, it's not the weirdest thing I'm sure they've done.
That's also probably true.
So they basically realized Jason is being controlled by Andromeda, and when he was sleeping on the drive to
the hospital,
well,
the cabin,
and also like on just, I don't know, since he's come back from being kidnapped and stuff, he's been like on occasion mumbling things in his sleep. Mm-hmm. And Whit like starts quoting them, and Jason's like, "Stop! Those are the codes." And Whit's just like, "I already finished saying all the code," and I was like, "What?" No.
Well, he said, "I'm finished saying all of it that I heard."
Oh, okay. So yeah, Jason has been feeding all the launch codes.
It was very the way that Whit starts saying it, and then Jason's like, "Shut up, stop!" That is very like. Someone starts like quoting someone's diary or something and like realize what you're saying and then try and stop them. It's like, Connie...
It'd be so funny if someone starts reading your diary and you yell, "No, the launch codes!"
They're like, Whit, stop saying it before Connie has the launch codes in her head now.
So Jason's like, Andromeda is controlling me, and
I mean,
then
they still haven't connected it to Andromeda. They're just
well,
like,
yeah,
it's
they don't know it's
Dervishi.
Andromeda. Connie does because she's the smartest one here. So now I'm gonna show you the pictures I made.
Okay.
This is the first one. I made this meme joke about Jason before, but it's just
Uh-huh.
like about the agency usually.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to make this second one as I was still listening to the episode because it necessitated it. Like, Jason, please, we can't keep doing this.
It's funny because until you made the mention of it last time, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that Jason did that. Like that he like binged himself on the Nova box to test it,
Yeah.
Eugene
It's so
style.
funny to me, out of like all the people in the room who were involved with Novacom, like I know Wit had like the
Wit had like
ugh.
the scariest one.
Yeah, Wit had a bad time, but like he didn't fully, that was the only time he was like influenced by it.
Yeah,
And that
and it
was like
also
within the imagination station.
he was also like, at least all the moments that we saw him, he was still himself. He was like, I have the knowledge of what it tried to do to me, but it didn't like,
Yeah.
overpower my
Whereas
emotions.
Jason was just like 5 o'clock shadow on his face, like, I don't know, glass bottle with probably water, I don't know, in his hand. Just like on the couch, just like, leave me here to die. He just shoves like greasy chips into his mouth. Like,
He has like
yeah.
open cartons of cigarettes, but they're all just gummy worms inside.
They're like sugar cigarettes that you get from like the candy store.
but gummy worms, because apparently he really likes gummy worms.
Oh, that's true. My guy is. I'm not
child.
gonna say what I was about to say.
Um,
You know the lemon thing? I was about to say that about gummy worms. I'm not going to.
yeah, and so they're like, oh dang, you done been mind controlled, and that's where the episode ended. So I mean, like we said, the Skye reveal was a weirder one, but still we've had a solid like pacing of like the big cliffhanger reveals for the end.
Also, it could be still the thing where it's like Skye is being coerced, but from what it sounds like, it does kind of sound like she's in on it.
I mean, here's the
It's
thing.
not looking good for her.
It's not looking good because, one, they did pay her $1 million
They
from an
paid
offshore
her
account.
so much money, and she got the hell out of Dodge so
And
fast.
two, someone went to the trouble of telling her, like, the subs that they were launching the missiles from. And if she's just there to gather intel on what's going on in town, I don't know why they would need to tell her the missiles.
She sounds so very involved. Like, there is still this stuff you were talking about last time, which, like,
I imagine
it doesn't
that still has to
completely
be
add up,
all the
but
initial, like, her initial contact has to be through, like, because of TV station and all that stuff.
they never told her to use a burner phone. They just thought she knew. She's like, wait, you guys are using... Are you gonna make another meme? It's like, wait, you guys have been using burner phones? Or you can make that one, so you get to make one.
I mean, I don't know. It could be the thing where it's like initially they had to coerce her, but then there was the point where she's in too deep, and so now she has to do it. And so at this point now, like, she's doing it willingly because she has no choice. So now they have to, like, she's an actual employee and they're paying her.
Yeah, like, I don't want to think she's actively started doing this from the start with malicious intent.
Yeah, I mean, not because I care about her deeply as a character, but just because I think it's a better writing choice if she didn't.
And also, I kind of care about Guy Feldstein, and I don't want his kid to be like this.
I know, when they're like $1 million, and I was like, well, I guess... I was like, I guess she wasn't quite as quality, but cheap as I would have expected.
Yeah, I heard that. I was like, does your dad know you have that much money?
Yeah, where were you when the lights were falling down in the station? The sky is falling. The sky is falling. That was fairy tale vision, granted, but you know.
Yeah.
So, anyways, my notes about things. So, they realize there's the pad of paper. First off, Connie's like, Yeah, it is weird that Skye's been coming into Wits End like a couple times a week, really consistently, but she only started doing that recently. And they're like, well, that sounds a little bit sus, maybe.
And Connie's like, "You think?" And they're like, "Yeah, we do,
And she keeps on
Connie."
acting like she's from the internet company and going upstairs to repair our modems, also. um,
And I was like, "Oh, that's so nice. What should we pay you?" And she's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. You'll get what's coming."
um, literally in the previous episode, like before we had any reason to suspect her or anything like that, um, at the beginning of it, when she asked for a pad of paper so she could write something down, and Connie's like, "Oh, here, I'll tear off the notes I'm giving to Witten Polehouse about the case and hand it to her." I was like, "Oh, Skye's gonna go over and she's gonna sketch over the pad to see what Connie is writing down."
Oh, I didn't even remember Skye doing that. I thought that happened off screen. I
No,
need to re-listen to the other
because
episodes
who came in
again.
first? Connie was taking a note over the phone from the Dr. Rusk, where he was like, "Yeah, the thief was a man," and I said the thing about like that's weird because he said before distinctively the thief didn't talk. Um, Maybe Dr. Rusk is actually Dr. Mephisto or whatever his name is,
Mephisto?
Dr. Delicio, the nuclear scientist. Um,
I don't know what you're talking
the
about.
bad guy they've been talking about, the guy that Jason took down.
You expect me to remember all the names?
Well, I don't. That's why I'm saying a similar name. Delphisi or whatever it was.
Just say Mephisto,
Delphici.
like the
Anyway, I think it
TV
was
show
Delphici. Yeah.
character.
Anyways, uh, Dr. Rusk phoned and Connie wrote down the note on the pad of paper to take a message for Polehouse and Wit. And then Skye came and she's like, "I also have the answers for Polehouse. Can I talk to him?" And Connie's like, "No, but I can take the message." She also writes that one down. And then Skye gets the phone call and she was like, "Oh, Connie, do you have something for me to write on?" And she was like, "Sure." And she ripped off her pad of paper and or piece of paper and gave it to Skye. And my thought was like, "Oh no, she just used the same pad and they were writing stuff about the investigation. Now Skye's gonna go and scribble over it." And no, even though I
They used
literally
an Uno card against her, so.
and it's funny because at that point I had no reason to be suspicious of Skye, but just the tropes and mysteries in my mind. I'm like, you just wrote down important information on there, and then you tore the page off and gave it to her. She's gonna do that, and so I thought it was funny that that didn't happen. But then literally they did the opposite, like they did the exact same thing to her with the same pad of paper. So I was almost there with seeing what was gonna happen, and I'm glad that Wit asked Polehouse about Skye so quickly in the episode because they're like, we can't tell Polehouse anything. Like, Wit, it was a stretch just to let Polehouse know, like, you don't have to look for Jason, he's safe. And so when they're like, oh, Skye is a bad guy, or maybe we should at least send someone, we should send an agent to go check on her. And then we immediately cut to Polehouse knocking on Skye's door. I was like, I don't think he's the one that they sent.
Yeah.
And then he helps her like carry her suitcase to the car, and she's like, "I'm going to Chicago, bye," and then burns rubber down the street. And I was like, "No, Polehouse," and it's gonna be forever before we even like communicate back to this. I feel
It
like
always makes me crazy, the trope of just like the person doing something really bad and then like this character who can like bust them or stop them or something like unknowingly helps them do it. I always think of like the picture of Dorian Gray where like Dorian kills Basil and then he like puts Basil's dead body in a trunk and then he starts like carrying it off and then a police officer is like, "Hey, it's really late at night. What are you doing with that trunk?" And Dorian's like, moving it, and the police officer's like, "Oh, do
need
you
a
want some
hand?"
help?" And I
Like
was
literally
like,
like
yeah.
SpongeBob and the shovel, the muddy shovels in the trunk.
Basically the same thing, yeah.
It's funny because yesterday I was listening to an older episode of Ship Hits the Fan, and they were talking about this quack like homeopathic doctor and also murderer from 1914. I mean, he was a known homeopathic doctor. They didn't know he was a murderer yet.
Sounds like Hannibal to me.
The point is, he was married and he had a mistress, and then all of a sudden one day, like, his wife wasn't around and his mistress had moved into his house and was wearing his wife's clothes and jewelry, and his friends were like, "Hey, where's your wife?" And he was like, "Oh, she died. Yeah, and I already cremated her body, so she's gone." And they were like, "What?" And so one of their friends, what did Charlotte say? She was like, one of his friends, the strong woman Volcana, was like,
It sounds like a Xena character.
Was she in the circus? I assume. I mean,
or like She-Ra.
Volcana, the strong woman. Like, I mean, obviously she had to be in the circus, but it was such out of nowhere. Anyways, they're like, she went to the cops and she was like, "Hey, I think this guy murdered his wife." And the cops were like, "Hey, did you kill your wife?" And he was like, no. And also, I lied. She didn't die, actually. She left me, and I was embarrassed. I didn't want to tell people, so I told them that she died. And the inspector was like, "Okay, I believe you." And then the doctor was like...
like, "That's rough, buddy. We've all been there."
They left, and the doctor was like, "They absolutely did not believe that. That was the worst lie I've ever told. Come on, mistress. We're disguising you as a young boy. We're hopping on the next cruise ship to England, to Europe. We are getting out of here." And it was only because they immediately ran away that the cop was like, "Hey, that is kind of suspicious." Went back and checked the house again and found a torso underneath the floorboards. And
oh my gosh.
And
that escalated very quickly.
Yeah.
What kind of telltale heart nonsense?
Yeah, so that immediately made me think of it, where he was like, told a bad lie. He was like, "That was the worst lie ever." And the cop's like, "Makes sense to me." And he was like, "He didn't buy that at all. We have to get out of here." And it's only because...
That's me trying to lie in like a murder mystery game.
And it's only because he panicked and ran away that they were like, "Well, that seems kind of suspicious. Maybe we should take a closer look." And then they caught him. Anyways.
When you roll a 20 on like deception, but a 1 on stealth.
Yeah. Or you roll like a critical failure on deception, but a crit success on like persuasion, which you probably wouldn't roll both of those, but I don't know. It's weird. Anyways, I'm glad that... I feel like, we talked before about how everything's progressing in this album so quickly. Like, it feels like events are happening. People are finding out things a lot faster than normal. And it's like, it's because people are actually communicating with each other. Which
it's nice, isn't it?
It feels weird for the pacing of a story. It makes the pacing of the story feel off when it's like, no, you're supposed to spend more time not knowing things and not keeping secrets from everyone. And it's like, man, so many things can happen when people talk to each other.
Considering the last multi-parter was literally drawn out into 3 parts because of a lack of communication that Kathy wrote, like Buck's adoption and everything. Actually having these characters communicate so well is so nice. I can't even put it into words.
And the convenience of Skye's car being like, "By the way, you only have this many miles to go," as Polehouse is standing there.
I thought it was gonna be like Jason and crew, like, "We hacked her car."
I thought her car was gonna...
battery.
I thought her car was gonna read out like a text message that she got since she was like about to get into it, and it was gonna
from the chairman, "Yo, we mind controlling Whitaker good tonight, y'all.
Time to launch all the missiles into the country. Is world domination." Heart
Want
emoji,
to get a
heart
celebratory
emoji.
Drink after we blow up the United States.
Money bag emoji, pleading emoji.
Dabbing emoji.
So, yeah, Wit was like, "Hey, Polehouse, look out for Skye." And he's like, "Oh, I just saw her like 20 minutes ago." And we're like...
Submarine emoji, fire emoji, skull emoji.
Skull and crossbones.
Confetti emoji. I love to think that the chairman either has like these really intense phone calls,
he's so
and then he
old
just
now,
texts
right?
like
So
all in emojis, and people are just like, they read it, they're like, "What does this mean?" Jason's like, "I'm not hearing voices, but I am seeing these pictures in my head, which tell me what to do."
It's like Twooey. He's beaming memes into his mind.
Mind control via meme.
Oh, love
Just
Twooey.
a bunch of like 100% and like fire.
Oh, yeah.
The chairman's just like, "Whitaker, I don't like you, but even I see that you and Jillian." He said,
"You're not fam, you're bae." So Polthouse is like, okay, I'm going to get on the Skye thing because I know where she was, how long ago, and I know how far she can get, and I know which direction she was heading.
Which is very useful.
Very useful, which is why I really didn't think that it was going to be very soon that information was going to be communicated in a useful way to anyone.
I love the last episode. We were just like, how much left can happen in this episode? Like, Jason's being mind controlled. And I was just like, there we go. That's gonna keep up our momentum for the last half.
Yeah, so then we find out, like, Jillian's like, I just found out a missile already got launched from the sub, and it crashed into an empty, like, an abandoned military complex, and no one was there, and it's clearly not a nuclear missile, otherwise, you know, it probably would have been a lot more devastation. I mean, if it was empty, if it hit anywhere on land, it would be a much more major deal, no matter where it hit, as opposed to a normal missile.
Do you think they can only control, like, minor things when Jason's unaware, or they can, like,
it would only be
actions and stuff? Because I really need a scene where Jason is fighting Jillian and she bests him in combat. I need a fight scene between, as Jill Barrett would say, like a combat analyst on YouTube for, like, movie and films. I need a sexy fight scene between these two. I don't know how that will work in an audio medium, but, like, I don't care.
I can't imagine it's that overt. I imagine it has to be very subtle. Like, that's why he's just kind of, like, thinking of things subconsciously or in his sleep. Getting, like, these faint, like, nudges in the back of his mind. I'm sure when they talk about controlling actions, it's like controlling someone's action to buy a birdhouse or to, like, go do something they otherwise, like, probably wouldn't have done. But if you ask them, they're like, I don't know, I just did it because I did. Like, you know, like, they're like, I can't control my body. Like, I don't think it would be that.
Like, this is my last dollar in my wallet, but I need to spend it on this birdhouse. Yeah. Even though I don't want to. I just need Jason to be a lot more loose with his words.
His emotions.
His emotions, and just say something to Jillian.
Oh, don't worry, Victoria. I'm sure in some way that disabling the mind control is going to involve having to, like...
Kiss.
To drug Jason in some way that's going to put him into, like, an incredibly, like, a lucid state.
I want the scene from Treasure Planet where Jason's like, looks up at Jillian and is like, you have beautiful eyes. And she's just like, he's gone insane or something. Whatever the line is.
Yeah, okay, I know what you mean. So, the missile's already launched, and I was like, okay, one, didn't think that would actually happen. That's crazy. But also, two, how? Because they shouldn't have the information from Jason unless they have all different contingency plans. And the whole conflict isn't going to be, we have to keep Jason safe for the information, but it's only because they went after Jason that we now know what they're after, and we have to go protect the other, you know, branches of people who know the information. But clearly, they did get it from Jason from inside his old noggin. We still have no idea how his fingerprints got there. I mean, it really comes down to a question. When was the last time he was there, really?
Someone could just sneak into...
Yeah, they could have taken a copy
store and then just, like, wipe it off something and then just
You're right. As a matter of fact, they could break in the window, they could lift a fingerprint, put it into a manila envelope, and hand it off to be delivered to a mole inside there who could
and
then
the watch, his fingerprint could have been on the watch, so that's what they needed the watch for. I mean, it could have been on anything, but, like, guaranteed the, like,
I would
special
imagine
item,
he probably was it sounded like it was such a fancy watch, like, maybe he wouldn't have been touching that, like, with bare hands. Like, it might have been something you could touch it with gloves.
No. I mean, it might be gloves, but, like, the rule of thumb with, like, handling delicate things now is, I don't know if it's for everything, but it is for books, and books tend to be a lot more delicate than other things. Don't use gloves because you don't have, like, as good a grip. Just wash the oils off your hands.
Okay.
Like, there's way more risk of, like, dropping something or accidentally, like, tearing something.
Because you have less, like, sensitivity and knowing. Yeah, makes sense.
So
less
gloves
dexterity.
are kind of more of a no-no now in lots of fields.
Good to know.
Yeah. I learned that during my English major. It carried over to the library major.
Yeah, I don't know.
Masters,
It
not
might have been
Major.
from the watch. I still feel like the watch would just be more generally like, oh, it was a decoy, so you think that you got robbed. Um,
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I
you
guess
want them to think they got robbed.
it doesn't really
You,
matter where they got the thumbprint ultimately. I guess they would
yeah.
be
I mean,
everywhere
with
in
the
the
watch,
store.
I think it's like pretty strongly guaranteed that Jason, more so than Jillian, would have been
That's
the one
true because they'd
handling
need to
it.
make sure it was Jason's fingerprint specifically.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess that whole thing then was just to frame Jason because they're like, we're going to get the codes from him, so we need to do this so that we can frame him and get him out of the way before he puts the pieces together. So they must have, they get the fingerprint, put in the envelope, hand it off, make like a rubber mold, a ballistic mold of his thumbprint, and then someone on the inside goes and like rolls it over like computer surfaces in a
Either that
restricted
or
area.
we have like a flashback next episode where
And we're like,
Jason's
oh
like,
yeah, I
that's why
forgot they
that
cut
guy
off
was
my
trying to
thumb.
force me to drink that lemonade last week.
I thought you were going to say, oh yeah, that's why I'm missing a thumb ever since the ambulance.
My thumb, where did it go? I've
I've
been
been
so focused
wondering,
on
I've been
everything else.
wondering where my finger went. I mean, look, if they could do an
Jason's like, that's why my hands felt so much lighter since I
if
woke
they
up.
could like take an epidural and put it all the way into the center of his brain while he's unconscious, they certainly could have amputated his finger while he was out. I mean, he would have noticed it and commented on it probably by now, but he was certainly anesthetized strongly enough to do that if they were able to put a needle inside of his brain without him knowing.
The only thing is, they would have timeline wise done it before he was knocked out.
What do you mean?
Like, the fingerprints would have been planted before he was kidnapped.
Why?
Because the fingerprints were planted when he was at the Pentagon a couple days.
No, but he wasn't at the Pentagon.
Yeah, I know, but the fingerprints were planted a couple days.
But they couldn't have been
earlier.
if it was that was the burglary inside the shop. That also would have had to have just happened now.
I don't know. I
assume
need to
those
re-listen to
fingerprints are
this
fresh
thing.
and they don't know when they got there, right? Because I mean, I don't know how.
I mean, if Jillian thought it happened a couple days earlier.
Well, she was just saying that's a window where I don't know when you were. I mean,
Yeah.
you'd think they would have security cameras in there where they could be like, well, Jason wasn't here, but there was a guy with a rubber thumb who came in.
There's one thing I really noticed, which we already kind of talked about, but also came up in this episode again.
Mm-hmm.
Jillian's just such a better spy than Jason.
And he brought it up when he walked back in.
He
was
also
like,
mentioned,
yeah,
like,
he was like,
hey,
so
at the
when we were
wedding,
at the wedding, and you spilled that
doing
water.
spy
I was
stuff.
like, I'm so glad that like Jason is now like
Jason is having a full-on crisis.
every iota of spare brain power he has right now, he's using to rewind every interaction he's ever had with Jillian and like reassessing them. And
that like that old vine where like the flowers put on the cat's head and then its eyes widen and then just like goes into space. That is Jason's brain ever since he found out Jillian is a spy for the NSA.
Yeah. I love that Jillian went to Whit, and when she was like, Whit, I need to ask you something. And I kind of misheard her intro to the line because I thought she was saying not as an agent but as a dad. And she's like, do you think there's any chance that Jason, and I thought she was going to say, likes me back.
I thought she was about to ask Whit about her dating prospects too, or like
she's
something.
Like, do you think there's any chance that Jason
like,
likes me back? But no, she's like, do you
but
think there's any
like,
chance
that
Jason is a terrorist?
Jillian, no.
Do you think there's any chance that Jason is a terrorist? And I was like, oh, that's not what I thought she was going to say.
I was just like dying, and I was just like, no, the Jilson divorce arc, why is this happening?
I mean, to be fair, at all points through it, she was never once like, Jason, I think you did this. It was like, I'm sorry.
Started to arrest him.
Well, yeah, but she was like, I'm sorry, Jason, I don't think you did this, but I'm being ordered to arrest you. I feel like she made it pretty clear.
It felt kind of, to me, like, I don't want this to be true, but I don't see any other option. It must have been you, so I'm going to arrest you.
I don't know if I'd say for sure, like, I don't think it was you, but she isn't, like, she doesn't sound, like, angry or accusatory about it. She's just, like, to be perfectly
She sounded
neutral.
kind of resigned.
She's, like, to be perfectly neutral and unbiased, like, it is possible, and we have to suspect you, and now given this evidence, this is what I'm being ordered to do. I'm sorry, so I have to do this.
Jillian's just like, Jason, you're just mad. I'm the one thing you could never be, a good NSA agent.
Jason. I literally wrote, like, we all knew that this was going to end with Jason getting arrested for federal treason. We all knew that it would come down to this one day.
I'm not surprised. But at the same time, the fact that it was Jillian who arrested him, I was just like, baby, no.
Yeah. And then we have the awkward phone call with Lily, where she calls while Jillian is halfway through arresting Jason, and which, like, just freeze, just hold your positions while we take the phone call.
That you can arrest my son after I'm off the phone.
And she was like, what do you want to know? And my mind was like, I mean, what would you even ask here? Like, did you ever do anything weird? Like,
did you ever do any war crimes? And she's like, actually, yeah, I did.
What was the shadiest thing that most related to terrorism you worked on at this medical research facility?
She's like, well, I did break the Geneva Convention when I was just starting my career, and they're like, oh, interesting, tell us more.
So, like, I don't know, they talked a lot about the Nuremberg trials.
Is that the sleep experiment?
No, that's thing? Like the Nazi doctor trials.
Oh, okay.
Where they were like, just
they did do sleep experiments with, like, Nazi.
Okay,
Germany,
maybe they were, but I mean, this was in general. The Nuremberg trials were the ones that set out the precedent of, like, the fact that you were just following orders is not an excuse to commit unspeakable crimes.
Oh, I was thinking of the sleep experiment thing where it was just like how many hours these people can go without sleeping before. No,
this is I'm talking about legal insane. Trial, not like clinical trial.
Gotcha. I was talking about human experimentation.
Yes.
The thing we were talking about before you started talking about judicial law.
Well, to be fair, I was talking about a judicial trial about human experimentation.
Okay. Tomatoes.
Exactly. So Connie fully name drops Novacom here before it even comes up. And I was like, I mean, as soon as they said, like, oh yeah, this company, they do experimental medical technology. It's like we all
Connie better have the biggest I told you so moment ever.
As soon as they mentioned that that's what the company did last episode, it was clear, like, oh, this is the tie-in to Andromeda. And the more Lily described it, we're like, okay, this is literally, like, it's not the same thing, but you were clearly working in parallel based on the radio wave study technology.
It's not the same thing, but it's like, this to the Nova boxes is Gravity Falls to the Owl House.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, it's so clearly...
I don't think they knew it was funded
project
by Andromeda, I imagine, because she talked about how suddenly one day the funding disappeared and we didn't know why. And I would assume that that is when, like, Album 38 happened. Exit happened. Andromeda was, like, taken down. They had to pull everything out, but they were, like, an anonymous sponsor for the project, so they didn't know what happened to the funding, is my guess. It was because that's when everything happened, or that's because that's when, like, Eugene took the research, something like that. Like, somewhere in the time span of the Novacom saga is where Lily was talking about that project ending. And then we find out Jason's been mind hacked, which I was not expecting.
His bean's been freaked.
Yeah, now they're just going to have to lock him in.
He's been mind freaked.
I was going to say lock him in, like, a sensory deprivation chamber, but it's like they're reading what's already in his mind. So, like I said before, what they need to do is fill his act.
They can't even knock him out because he was doing it in his sleep,
What they need to do is keep him awake, but keep him constantly occupied and focused on something gibberish.
Jillian.
No, like, just put on, like, YouTube kids videos or something like that on loop, like, just something to
Bob Ross.
Something to put Bob inside Ross. Of his brain, just audio for him to, like, be thinking and focusing on, something that's like an earworm to get in his head.
Yeah, put on some Bob Ross and then give him some paint and stuff, or let him kiss Jillian.
No, but that's too, like, meditative. Like, your mind is, like, wandering and thinking of other things while you're painting. You need something that you're, like, focused in on, where it's like it's in and you can't get it out of your head.
I got it. Put on loop the film.
Baby Shark.
No.
Clockwork Orange.
No. The film that you and I despise, that feels like it never ends, that
Oh.
isn't Space Odyssey,
Oh, okay.
that is a newer release from Marvel
Marvel's
Studios.
Eternals.
Eternals. If they play on loop
At first,
Eternals...
you were like, that we despise. I was like, are you talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey or Barbie: A Perfect Christmas?
Or they could put on Barbie: A Perfect... We used so much brain energy a couple days ago when we were
Trying
watching
to
Barbie: A
parse what
Perfect
was going to
Christmas.
happen.
That
And just think, with Jason's paranoid brain, he would be working double the speed that we were.
Yeah, exactly. He would be like forming somehow even more theories than we were about all of that.
Yeah.
I think watching Eternals is the perfect way to keep your brain occupied to a frustrating
But the thing
degree.
is, the important thing is you can't do something that's going to bore you to where you lose focus or drift off, which is why I said you need something that is like addictive, like almost something that's like
drugs.
stuck in your head, but not in a way where you're going to like go into the zone with it. Like
A really good song.
a really catchy song that he's just going to be singing.
We don't talk about Bruno.
Yeah, they're just like, what is Jason singing about? What are the codes? And they tune their radio that's tuned into his chip, and it's just like playing like the Billboard Top 100 on loop. And I'm like,
Jolene.
or it's just playing his soaps.
It could play his soaps. I did say that before.
You
Just
did.
think about his soaps.
That is something that would occupy every bit of his focus and
Yeah.
like fully draw him in.
Again, Eternals or Barbie: A Perfect Christmas.
Also, that would be great because everything would sound so like dramatic and over the top that they would think that it's real.
Yeah, and I bet, you know what the thing is? When you were talking about, like, thinking about a different topic, and I said, yeah, his soaps, like, the first time, I was thinking, like, there probably is, like, that drama is so ridiculous, there probably is, like, a missile plot somewhere.
Exactly. He
can just borrow that storyline and launch
he'll
codes.
do that, and they'll be hearing things. They're like, the launch codes have been passed off to Manny, but he lost them when he slept with his brother-in-law. But then his pet monkey grabbed the paper where they were written down on, and they're just like frantically
but
taking
then
notes.
Derek rushed in and shot the monkey, and then they fell from a skyscraper, and now they're hunting for the launch code number.
Exactly, yeah, and they're going to be like, okay, we're and hunting off for people who don't exist. That is the ideal scenario.
And then they're talking about it in the break room, and then one guy comes in, he's like, oh, I love that episode. And they're like, what did you just say? The chairman comes in,
what
and he's
happens
like, I love that episode.
There's one guy who tunes into what's happening, and he's embarrassed about really liking the show, so he clues into what they're talking about, but he can't let them know that it's a soap because they would be like, how do you know all of that? And so he just has to like sit there quietly and sip his coffee and let them go on their wild goose chase.
He's literally just sitting there listening to the others theorize about the connections between all the people, and he's just like, that theory is so off. They don't even know.
No, I like that, but I do also like the idea of like, this is so bad and everything is terrible. I need to tell them, but also I'm too insecure about my enjoyment of the show to say anything, and so I have to let it keep on happening. And I'm gonna let the chairman's plan fail.
I'm gonna let them get really invested in the storyline, and then I'm going to reveal to them that I like the show, and by then they'll be too invested in the show to stop watching it, and I'll finally have people to talk about my favorite soap opera.
I finally hooked them in now because they don't know that they're talking about
because
the
I've been
show.
trying to get them to watch the show for months, and they haven't been doing it, but now they're watching the show without realizing it.
See, you're already caught up now.
Double Jeopardy.
Don't even have to watch the old seasons now because you already know what's going on.
Man, I can't believe we just predicted 100%
solved it.
accurately how the album ends.
It's always. I mean, I feel kind of bad sometimes for the writers when we're able to like nail it like that in advance so hard, because it's like,
I just feel bad for people.
It's
who
that
watch
balance
these
of
videos
like,
and we spoil
I want you
it
to
for
be
them.
surprised, but also it means that it was foreshadowed so well because we were able to figure it out so precisely.
Just like the Jillian spy reveal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're
Devin, we're too smart.
too smart.
It's a curse. We're too smart and funny and cool. What do we do? My hair's blue. How's it feel to have such a cool person that you know?
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to work through it.
I know.
Um,
It's such a burden for you to bear.
I am gonna give another 5 out of 5 to these middle two
I
episodes.
was kind of unsure if I was going to give a 5 out of 5, but this last episode really won me over, so yes, I am.
I can't believe Lily did that.
I can't believe Lily Graham broke the Geneva Convention and Jason's being mind controlled. If you came up
And
to
it's
me
Lily's
and you
fault.
told me those two things, I would have been like, what?
Jason is being mind controlled with a chip invented by Lily Graham. With Lily Graham's mind control chips.
I can't believe Jillian's gonna have to use the power of love to free Jason from his mind control.
I can.
I'm so
I knew
glad
that.
this
I
is
knew
how
that
the
that was
album's
how it was
gonna
gonna end. Like I told you, I always knew it was going to end with mind control being broken by the power of love and true love's kiss and Jason getting arrested for federal treason.
One thing I'm really happy about that I don't think I mentioned yet is that there's never really been any moments where they doubted Jillian. There's been some moments where they're like, "Who are you?" But everyone's
They've doubted
just been
Jason
like,
more than they've doubted Jillian.
I trust you, and it's sweet. I mean, that might happen in the next
Also,
episode, but
it's
like,
funny.
I'm pretty confident that Jillian's not a bad guy or anything.
In the previously
Still scared she's gonna leave, though.
in the previously on, it had when Jillian was first like, Wit's like, "You're an agent," and she's like, "Didn't the agency tell you, or didn't headquarters tell you they were going to send an agent?" And it was like, "Yeah, but I didn't think it was you," and that means that Jason didn't know someone was sent to like shadow him and protect him from all of his Mr. Magoo antics. But
Okay,
Wit
I
did.
take that line as like, didn't someone tell you, the agency tell you someone would send an agent? I took that as like an agent to try and save Jason after he was kidnapped, not to babysit Jason for an extended
No, because
amount of
I
time.
don't think he called the agency, as far as we know.
I mean, I just imagine
I
that
mean,
like the agency itself contacted Wit and was just like, through means we're not going to tell you. We found out Jason was kidnapped, so we're gonna send someone to like try and.
Well, that wouldn't make
him.
sense because then Wit would be like would immediately know like, oh, they didn't just send you here. Like you've been here for months or longer. So I think that means that they told Wit like, hey, don't tell Jason this, but we're sending a babysitter for him. Don't let him know because you know what he'll be like. And Wit's like, oh, don't worry. I understand fully.
I'm imagining Wit probably thought the babysitter would be like less involved and stick to the shadows more and not be like the bubbly new coworker that follows Jason, Connie, and Jules around like a puppy dog.
Which is funny because logically, based on the way that Wit is also constantly can't keep his nose out of like projects and stuff like this, they probably also have someone else who is Renee. Renee is Wit's agent that they told Jason. They're like, hey, listen, we're sending a babysitter for your dad. Don't tell him about it.
So funny to think that like
you know what he'll be like. And Jason's like, yeah, I understand completely. Not like me.
Just think like on top of that, Renee's like first day, she's just like, okay, I'm a bit of a new agent in the field, but like I got this. And then she just gets horribly traumatized, and she's like, what kind of sick place is this? This is the worst.
The problem
mission
is
ever.
she's not a field agent. They took someone who is like a computer specialist and sent her in because they're like, you'll be able to bond with him, get his trust because he's a computer guy and a programming specialist primarily. So we're going to give someone who is less heavy on like field experience side of things. And
and then after the first day of work, headquarters through her dog program, because her dog never gets mentioned. It's like it was just dropped.
She journals everything that happens to her dog.
Yeah, and then
her dear old government
dog. That sounds like a George Orwell thing. And then her dog is just like, hey, are you okay? You look kind of out of it. She's just like, is this real?
Is this just fantasy?
They're like, it would probably be the ethical thing to pull you from this. So we're not going to.
Unfortunately, we're the NSA, so... Yeah, I'm excited.
Things we still need before the album ends. Tasha mentioned, still can't believe I said that. Tasha mentioned, plus Tasha trained or was a consultant for
so
Jillian.
good.
It'd be so funny. Girl gang. Girl gang.
Do you remember? I mean, Jillian was already part of our like Ocean's 9 cast, and we made her like the jewelry forger as well as a number of other roles.
We made her like the wild card, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, she had a bunch of roles because she can do anything. She's the whole Ocean's 9 unto herself, honestly.
Yeah.
What was I saying about
what other things?
Jillian and
this
Tasha.
Album do you want? Jillian needs to stay in Odyssey.
Yes,
she's not allowed to leave.
Absolutely.
She needs to be like, Jason, I need there to be a scene. Oh, Polehouse has to find out about Jillian because we found out he like knows some stuff is going on, and he's just like, an agent blah 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 said these things. Apparently he doesn't know that agent is Jillian, which I just need him to find out he's been following all these orders from Jillian.
Was it in the previously on? Because I feel like maybe it was from the last episode when Jillian barged into Whit and Polehouse's meeting where they're having the whiteboard notes.
That was the last episode.
Well, because there was in this episode was a clip, but maybe it was from the previously on where she came and she's like, "Hey, Dawn," and he was like, "Jillian, that's Polehouse," and I heard that and I was like, wait, he knows now? But then they weren't together, so that must have been the previously on, and that was before. And because I was like, he knows, like the most important reveal of all.
If they did that off screen, I would be so.
That would be terrible. That's the biggest reveal.
I need a moment. I've decided how I want the Jilson, like what note I want Jilson to end the album on. And I think this is the most likely. I think Jason will be like, well, since all the code stuff and like everything with Andromeda was like figured out, you probably don't need to stay in Odyssey, do you? And she's just like, well, you know what? You get into a lot of nonsense, Jason.
I mean, to be fair, she wasn't here specifically because of them. She was there because of endless ongoing threats.
And
her
it's just like, and there's always so many people who just want you dead just because of the way you are. And so I think that I should stay and continue working on this. Otherwise she's like, you'll probably die as soon as I leave, so I think I should stick around. And then Jason's just like, do you want to go to coffee at Hell's Diner? I don't know. I think that's the reason why she'll cite to why she needs to stay.
Here's where I thought you were going to end with that.
Okay.
Is she's going to be like, look, I'm here to protect you from all different threats that are never going to end as long as you're alive. So I guess
I have to kill you.
So I guess ... till death do us part.
And then she shoots him in the face.
And then they're married, and then Whit's like, I now pronounce you man and wife.
No, I went with the realistic.
Yeah. And
well,
now she's
I genuinely could see that happening, where Jason's like, are you gonna go now? And she's just
such
like,
a cheesy
people
James
are just
Bond
always trying
line,
to murder
though,
you,
but it
so
fits in well.
Stick around.
I didn't know if that's what you were leading to with your excitement.
But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, logically, her mission isn't over, and it won't be over, ever.
It's never gonna end.
And the best way to protect Jason is to marry him.
Yep.
It's so funny that I thought she was going to ask Whit about Jason having a crush on her, and then she was like, do you think that maybe Jason possibly could be a terrorist?
I mean, like, the same thing happened to me. I thought she was going to ask that, too, and was also caught off guard. I was just like, yes, it's happening! No, what are you doing? And then just like, Jason Whittaker, I'm arresting you. And I was like, no!
The thing I was going to say a minute ago and I forgot was, it's not necessarily like sweet for any meaningful reason, but there was something that made me be like, oh, about it was when she was like, I understand completely, Agent 1131.
No, that was so sweet.
There was I was
when
like,
she said
why
that,
do I find it romantic
like,
that she's calling him by his code number?
Oh, calling someone by a number, not a name, can be so personal, actually. For a second when she said that, I was like, girl, did you just say another launch code? And I was like, oh, right, that's a spy name. I was like, that's cute. Girl, help. I can't stop saying the launch codes.
We're going to duct tape Jason's mouth shut because he just, like, every time he opens his mouth, he's like, 318.99.
They need to take him into a convenience store and give him a code scanner and tell him to start announcing the prices of different items.
Why would he need a scanner? He can just read them off the tags.
And then just keep him there until this all blows over.
He could also just say random numbers and letters, I guess.
Are they going to have to get Lily Graham to deprogram him?
Well, here's the thing. I mean,
if they put him in a CAT scan, will his brain explode like scanners?
Probably not. I'm going to assume that they're simply going to have to shut off the program that's controlling him because I can't think of any easy way to get that chip back out of him.
Do you think they like did something? They're like, if you shut down the program, you kill Jason.
I mean, I guess we'll find out.
They put Jillian in that situation. She's like, no, Jason.
Yeah.
Honestly, Jillian would be like, oh, frick. Okay, sorry, Jason.
I can't think of any remotely reasonable way to get the chip out of there without having to fully cut his brain in half.
Oh, I don't like that option.
Especially because it's so small. So I assume they're just going to have to
they put a hole in his head.
Remove the program that is controlling it and just hope no one else figures out the password. They're
How
like,
many other
tap,
people
tap,
do you think they've been using these chips on? Because do you think there's a chance that they, like I said, put one in someone connected to Skye or one in Skye herself?
I feel like Skye's actions are probably too overt to be like, oh, you know, she would know she's being controlled kind of thing. Like, I feel like it must be a very subconscious kind of thing. Also, if they
I mean, like, maybe they put one in Skye just in case, or, like, she did find out, and they're just
switch.
like...
They suicide
you just
squatted
pretend that, like, you don't know, and we'll keep, like, working for us, and then we won't, like, break your brain or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they certainly...
Although they wouldn't need to pay her that much money.
Exactly. I was going to say, if they were forcing her to do it, they wouldn't have to pay her $1 million also.
See, the Skye is making me crazy because on one hand, it's like, why the phone number? On the other hand, is why the money? Unless
they paid her, they're like forcing her to do it, but they don't want people to realize she's being forced if they catch her, and so they paid her what to them is a pittance, so that it will look like she's doing it voluntarily, and she won't be able to convince them that. She's like, no, they forced me, like, I didn't have a choice. And they're like, well, this $1 million transferred into your account a couple days ago from an offshore bank says otherwise. You know?
Yeah. I don't have much left to say.
It's always the age-old, like, how deep is Kathy going? Is it a double bluff or a triple bluff or a quadruple bluff?
See, one thing I have to keep on reminding myself is there's only 2 parts left.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty confident in saying there will be some things.
They'll catch the chairman, but Skye will get away.
In this episode, and are touched on, like, in the next album. Like, I'm assuming if Jillian sticks around, lots of the spy stuff is going to be, like, addressed in the future.
I want the, like, benefit of a doubt episode that comes after this where Kayla Calhoun is talking about, like, the weird schedule at work now that her boss has been, like, arrested for terrorism and, like, helping launch missiles in, like,
you want to hear something weird?
About the episode or in general?
In general, but also kind of connects to the topic of
I hope so.
I've been reading a lot because I took out a bunch of
Because you're Victoria.
I took out a bunch of library books. I want to finish them before they're due. And, like, of the last 4 books I've read, all of them had female protagonists. All of them had moms. The first one I read, the mom was a nurse. The second one I read, the mom was a nurse. The third one I read, the mom was a doctor. And this one I'm reading right now, the mom is an orderly. Isn't that weird?
I mean, it is. I mean, statistically, it's a little weird.
I
It's
mean, I
not
will
like
say
the
2 of the books were written by the same author.
okay. It's not like the weirdest profession to be like, this is what I'm going to assign the mom character. But
it's just like the last 4
4
books
in a row. Yeah.
That's strange to me.
Maybe you're being mind controlled
Oh man.
into picking books
Birdhouse is nurse
being,
moms, doctor, medical moms.
Yeah, you're being mind controlled into taking books out of the library where moms are working the medical field.
I started reading the 4th book this morning, and it was like the mom walked into the room where the main character was, and it was just like she walked in wearing her scrubs, and I was like, another one. I was like, another one? Are they a nurse?
Are you sure you didn't read the same book 4 times in a row?
No, because I was just like, another nurse? And it was just like, no, she's an orderly. And I was just like, it's still...
She's what you call a Renaissance woman. She dabbles in all kinds of things.
Oh my gosh. It's so weird.
Okay, we should wrap this up.
Yeah, I'm hungry.
What are we talking about next time?
The OAC June and July episodes.
May and June.
Oh, May and June. Which are
it's
Results May Vary is June.
and before that was May? Knox on Love.
Knox on Love, yeah. So Knox on Love and Results May Vary.
Yeah. So we're doing that next time just so that we can still put out an episode next week. When
I'm gonna be gone
because you're gone, and also that's when the 5th episode will be coming out, and we won't be able to review both of the last 2 yet because only one will be out. So that'll be next week, as long as I get this episode out right away, and then the week after that we'll have the last 2 parts of this album out, which I'm going to assume the next one is Dawn because we're around 5 or 6 a.m. right now in the timeline.
That sounds right.
I don't know what the last one
11 V's.
Yeah.
And then
what if it actually is? Finally, after all these predictions, you're finally right.
I want it to be so bad. So Dawn and 11 Z's will be after the OAC episodes.
So that'll be coming out.
And the album review.
Yeah, that'll be coming out like just after the last episode comes out. It'll probably be a couple days later because we'll want more time to like re-listen to the whole thing, to do the album review, to like process it.
I'm probably going to re-listen to the whole album.
As an entity, yeah.
Yeah.
So
when I come back from my trip, the new episode's going to be waiting for me.
Yep.
I get to see you tomorrow!
Oh, yeah.
Unless something goes horribly awry.
That is tomorrow.
Yeah. Get the address from Gabe, because I don't know what it is.
Okay. So that's what we're doing next time. Until then, thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube. I've been Devin Francis, also known as Dr. Blackguard.
And Victoria's thoughts for the day. I would love to be on an episode of Sesame
100%
Street.
Fire, confetti.
I would love to be on an episode of Sesame Street and meet Elmo or the Muppets and meet Animal. But the first thing I would say to them is, aha, I've caught you red-handed. And then I would be kicked off set.
No, Victoria, you're blue-handed.
I'm blue-handed. I've caught them red-handed. They have red hands.
Well, I would say the red hand, I mean, I guess technically the red hand is...
when you say I've caught you red-handed, you're not talking about yourself.
I know, I'm saying, I guess you are saying the person's hand is red, but grammatically it feels like you should be talking about your own hand, right? Like if I said, I've caught you while red hand. I don't know. I guess it's ambiguous.
I'm right.
No, I mean you are right. Like the red hand is supposed to refer to the person who's caught. It just feels like in terms of syntax, I guess it's ambiguous whether who you're referring to. Like I know what it's supposed to mean, but if you just take the words at their value, I guess.
My 25 years had one of my jokes ruined so horribly and mangled in front of my very eyes like a carcass.
I don't think that's true. I've ruined a lot of your jokes before. Goodbye.
Goodbye. I hate you.